once an inner sect disciple of the Tianxian sword sect, yet betrayed by my beloved junior sister and outsiders. My spiritual roots were crippled, and my spiritual rings were stolen. Returning to my family, I was treated as a scapegoat by my own uncle. My limbs were severed, and I was thrown into a dungeon to wait for death. Even the young family head who harmed me is currently living a carefree and happy life outside. And at this moment, I am curled up in a dungeon smelling of blood, staring at the numbers flickering once every second on the panel, while the corners of my mouth slowly curl up. Qingyun City, Gu family dungeon. The stench of rust and blood mixed together. I lay on the cold stone slab, my limbs splayed at a distorted angle. The excruciating pain from my dantian made me gasp for air. Just after waking up, I discovered I had transmigrated into a hapless fellow whose cultivation had been crippled, and whose tendons in his hands and feet had been severed. The original owner, Gu Qingxian, inner sect disciple of the Tianxian sword sect, ambushed and severely wounded by his beloved junior sister Lu Yueru and outsiders. His spiritual rings were stolen, and his spiritual meridians were crippled. Returning to the family thinking he could find shelter, but his own uncle, Gu Zhan, in order to protect his son Gu Tian who had provoked the Qing Tian sect, directly used me as a scapegoat. With one palm strike, he shattered my remaining meridians, severed the tendons in my hands and feet, and will send me out to be beheaded in 3 days. Fuck. I lay on the ground, motionless, my whole body numb, transmigrated, starting off in a dungeon, cultivation crippled, and about to be beheaded as a scapegoat. Standard cannon fodder template, the kind that dies as dead as it gets. Just as I was sinking into despair, a crisp, pleasant, and playful female voice suddenly rang out in my mind. Ding. Detected the host's strong desire to survive. God-level replication and amplification system is binding. Binding successful. Reward the host with 1 binding starter pack. Do you wish to open it? System. My broken body shook violently. As a young man from Blue Star who has read countless web novels, I am too familiar with this thing. A standard cheat for transmigrators. This system can replicate all things in the world. Cultivation techniques, spiritual artifacts, comprehension, and natural talent, and perform amplification. 1 replication point. Can replicate once or amplify by 1 time. Can be used cumulatively. No restrictions whatsoever. Open the binding starter pack. Congratulations to the host for unlocking a hidden function, automatically increasing 1 replication point every second. My breathing stopped. 1 point per second, 60 points per minute, 3,600 points per hour, 86,400 points per day, 86,000 times amplification. If I save up for 10 days, 860,000, 100 days, 8,600,000, amplifying 8,600,000 on my cultivation, I will ascend to immortality on the spot, and dominate all ages. Scalp tingling, explosively satisfying. Just as my thoughts were surging, a heavy sound of footsteps approached from far to near. The iron door creaked open. A figure carrying a food box walked over in the dim firelight, looking honest and simple, wearing plain cloth clothes, about 30 years old. Memories of the original owner surged up. Gu Changfeng, a clansman from a branch family, with mediocre talent, a transparent person in the family. But in the days when the original owner was kicked out of the sect and suffered cold looks, only this clansman often came to visit, sharing his own scarce cultivation resources with him. Xiandi, you have suffered. Gu Changfeng's eyes turned red instantly. With trembling hands, he placed the food box on the ground, and passed it through the gaps in the iron bars. Quick, eat something quickly. This is the meat soup I specially stewed for you. It's still warm. The food box opened. The aroma of meat instantly dispelled the musty smell. My stomach growled unworthily. I was really starving, but with my limbs broken, moving even a little bit hurt like a drill. Changfeng Ji, the family head severed the tendons in my hands and feet. I can't move. His tears gushed out. He trembling lifted the food box. Xiandi, move closer. I will feed you. I crawled toward the iron bars bit by bit. Crawling just 1 meter took 3 minutes. Each move hurt so much I almost fainted. No different from a maggot. Not speaking of any dignity, but survival is the priority. The system is awesome, but it still needs time to accumulate replication points. I gritted my teeth to stay awake. Once I fainted, I might never wake up again. The warm meat soup slid down my throat into my stomach. Warmth spread through my limbs and bones. This was the first hint of warmth I had felt since coming to this world, giving my almost frozen body the feeling of coming back to life. After finishing a steamed bun, the hunger was slightly relieved. I glanced at the system panel. 674 points. 10 minutes. More than 600 times amplification. With some strength back, I leaned against the cold wall. Gu Changfeng seemed to have remembered something. He took out a pill wrapped in oil paper from the compartment of the food box and secretly passed it to me. This is the rejuvenation pill I saved money to buy. Its healing effect is very good. A wave of warmth surged into my heart again. Immediately following, he lowered his voice, his eyes carrying a hint of determination. Xiandi, listen to me. I have already made arrangements. The 2 guards on duty tonight are familiar with me. I will get them drunk, then open the prison door and carry you out of Qingyang City. After that, never come back. My brain buzzed, completely stunned. Secretly releasing a major family prisoner is a capital offense in the Gu family. This honest and simple clansman actually did this for me. He squeezed a forced smile on his face and patted his chest. My life originally was saved from the jaws of a spirit beast by your father back then. I never had the chance to repay it all these years. Now that he is gone, this debt of gratitude will be repaid to you. Being able to exchange my life, which has lived 10 more years, for your path to survival. It is worth it. I looked at his honest, almost dull face. A string deep in my heart was pulled hard. Changfengji. My voice was hoarse. Looking at him. No need to go. Tonight, you just sit outside and drink. When those two guards are drunk, you just need to do one thing for me. Open the prison door. Gu Changfeng was stunned. Xiandi, you. I can't walk. I smiled, my gaze falling on that rejuvenation pill. But I can sit here, waiting for them to come find me. After saying that, he fed the rejuvenation pill into Gu Qingxuan's mouth, letting him swallow it. The next moment, Gu Qingxian secretly ordered the system. Give me 100 times amplification of the rejuvenation pill. Ding. Consumed 100 replication points. Amplifying. Amplification successful. The first grade rejuvenation pill has been amplified into a 4th grade supreme healing pill. In an instant, majestic yet gentle medicinal power spread out in his throat. There was no need to deliberately refine it at all. It flowed through his limbs and bones like a hot spring. His injuries recovered at an astonishing speed. The wounds on his body also healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The severed tendons in his hands and feet were also rapidly connected and restored. At this moment, Gu Qingxian only felt an unbearable itch in his body, like 10,000 ants crawling and gnawing inside his body. However, under the overbearing effect of this 5th grade supreme great returning pill, even his crippled dantian began to condense again. That drill-like, bone-piercing itch came fast, and left fast. In less than several dozen breaths, the dry heat in Gu Qingxuan's body receded like a tide. He slowly opened his eyes. A gleam of light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Looking down, those ferocious and intertwined wounds on his body had already disappeared, only scars growing one after another on the skin. He tried to move his wrists and ankles. Crack. A crisp sound of bones rang out. The original severed hand and foot tendons had now completely healed, even tougher and more powerful than before. He tried clenching his fist. A long-lost sense of power came from his arm, although this power was still very weak. But to him, it was no less than a rebirth. 4th grade supreme healing pill. Indeed overbearing. Gu Qingxian sighed secretly in his heart. The effect of this pill was far better than he had imagined. The medicinal power was gentle, hardly wasting a single bit, all absorbed by his body. Such a pill, if placed in the auction house of Qingyang City, I am afraid it could at least be auctioned for a sky-high price of 100,000 spirit stones, and it would be the kind that is priceless and has no market. And he consumed only 100 replication points to get it. The power of the system refreshed his cognition once again. Gu Changfeng looked on, dumbfounded, his mouth opened wide enough to fit an egg. He watched with his own eyes as the wounds on Gu Qingxuan's body healed at an unbelievable speed. That pale-as-paper face also gradually revealed a healthy rosy glow. This is the effect of the rejuvenation pill. The rejuvenation pill he bought. He himself knew clearly. It was just an ordinary 1st grade pill. Being able to stop bleeding and continue life was already a great fortune. How could it have such heaven-defying efficacy? Xiandi, you are. Gu Changfeng stammered, at a loss for words. Everything happening before his eyes had completely exceeded his scope of understanding. Gu Qingxian did not want to explain too much about the system. After all, the other party wouldn't understand, so he just found an excuse. Perhaps it is because the quality of this pill you bought, Changfengji, is excellent. Or perhaps my constitution is special. In short, I feel much better. As he spoke, he braced against the wall, and slowly stood up. His legs stood steadily on the ground, without the slightest tremor. Gu Changfeng looked at Gu Qingxian, who had almost recovered as before, although full of doubts, but more of it was joy from the bottom of his heart. He scratched his head, and laughed honestly. As long as you are better, as long as you are better. It seems I was lucky, and bought a supreme quality pill. He did not probe further, just assuming it was his extreme good luck, having bought a pill of extraordinary quality occasionally refined by an alchemist who made a mistake. In his view, as long as Xiandi is fine, everything else is more important. Xiandi, how do you feel now? Is there any other discomfort in your body? Gu Changfeng asked with concern. Gu Qingxian moved his muscles and bones, feeling the surging vitality in his body, and shook his head. I feel better than ever before. However, just as he finished speaking, his brows slightly wrinkled. He tried to mobilize the spiritual energy in his dantian, but found that although his dantian had been reshaped, extremely tough, it was empty inside, not a trace of spiritual energy, just like an undamaged bottle, but without a single drop of water inside. His crippled cultivation did not return with the recovery of his dantian. However, now relying on replication points, increasing his cultivation rapidly was nothing more than a matter of several blinks. Gu Changfeng saw his change in expression, thinking it was a relapse of his injuries, and quickly stepped forward to support him. Xiandi, what is wrong with you? Is it hurting somewhere again? I am fine. Gu Qingxian shook his head, suppressing the thoughts in his heart. He glanced at his system panel. 852 points. In the few minutes he had been talking to Gu Changfeng, the replication points had increased by more than 200. Looking at the jumping numbers, Gu Qingxuan's mind became active, and he secretly ordered, "System, replicate Changfengji's cultivation." Ding. Consumed 1 replication point. Replication successful. The next moment, Gu Qingxian only felt a mysterious consciousness and profound power instantly surging into his dantian. His own cultivation rapidly skyrocketed. Body tempering realm level 1. Body tempering realm level 2. Body tempering realm level 3. Body tempering realm level 5. It reached body tempering realm level 5 in just several blinks. However, body tempering realm is only the most basic introductory realm. He still could not condense spiritual energy himself. Only after reaching the chi condensation realm could he use spiritual energy. Strength surged, and the realms of this world are divided into a total of 12 realms. Body tempering realm, chi condensation realm, Xiantian realm, Yuan Dan realm, purple mansion realm, soul palace realm, will see realm, king ceiling realm, battle emperor realm, venerable realm, sage realm, emperor realm. So when his cultivation reached body tempering realm level 5, there was no such power fluctuation as when a high-level cultivator breakthroughs. However, this was indeed a problem. He did not want to alert those who were about to die after his cultivation skyrocketed, because Gu Qingxian did not want them to escape. Capturing them would be very time-consuming. After all, after bloodwashing the upper echelons of the Gu family, he still had to return to the sect to end the betrayal back then. Then Gu Qingxian secretly asked the system, is there a function to hide realm breakthroughs? Ding. This function has already been prepared for the host. Please do not be overconfident too early. Make sure every detail is done well. Hearing this, Gu Qingshuan's eyes twitched slightly. This system seems a bit strange, but as long as it exists, very good. Gu Qingxian nodded slightly, then activated the aura diffusion of the realm. Next, he continued to order the system, amplify my current cultivation by 900 times. Ding. Consumed 900 replication points, performing 900 times amplification. Taking advantage of the system's amplification period, Gu Qingxian took a deep breath, letting himself calm down, and said to Gu Changfeng in a deep voice, Changfeng Ji, your plan for tonight is too risky. He had to first dispel Gu Changfeng's idea of taking him to escape. Escape? Why should he escape? Qingyang City, Gu family, is the starting point for his revenge. He wants to make everyone who has bullied him and betrayed him pay a heavy price in blood. Gu Changfeng was stunned for a moment, immediately anxious. How can it not be risky? Xiandi, if we don't escape now, it will be too late. The family head and others have already decided to execute you in 3 days in the clan ancestral hall in front of the Qingtian sect elders, to set an example. I know. Gu Qingshuan's tone was terrifyingly calm. So, I cannot leave. Not only can I not leave, I will also personally send them all to hell. What? Gu Changfeng was greatly shocked, thinking that Gu Qingxian had been stimulated, and had lost his mind. Xiandi, don't talk nonsense. They are all Yuan Dan realm or even higher level experts. How could you possibly fight them? Just because I couldn't fight them before, doesn't mean I can't fight them now. The corners of Gu Qingshuan's mouth curled into a cold arc. The next moment, the system's voice rang in his mind. Replication successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Purple Mansion Realm Level 9 peak cultivation. The moment the system prompt fell, boom, a majestic and vast power appeared out of thin air in Gu Qingshuan's dantian. That power was so pure, so sturdy, as if a sleeping giant dragon, awakening in his dantian. The moment that power surged into his dantian, Gu Qingshuan's body shook violently. His blood-stained sleeves fluttered without wind, whistling loudly. At this moment, all his focus was immersed in his dantian. That originally empty dantian had now turned into a hazy sea of energy, powerful and unparalleled strength surging, roaring, each impact, expanding the space of his dantian several times. Body tempering realm is to hammer the physical body. Chi condensation realm is to condense weak spiritual energy in the dantian. Xiantian realm is to let solid spiritual energy penetrate through all meridians in the body. Endless and unceasing. Yuan Dan realm is to compress all spiritual energy, condensing into a Yuan Dan in the dantian. And Purple Mansion realm is on the basis of Yuan Dan, breaking the pill, and opening the Purple Mansion. Once the Purple Mansion is opened, the dantian is no longer a dantian, but transforms into a sea of energy that can accommodate rivers, lakes, and seas. The cultivator's spiritual energy storage and recovery speed will undergo a world-shaking change. At this moment, the power in Gu Qingshuan's body was undergoing this final step. Boom rumble. In the sea of energy dantian, a huge vortex formed out of thin air, spinning crazily, compressing. Immediately after, an illusory purple palace, in the center of that vortex, slowly rose. The Purple Mansion was formed. The majestic power no longer violently impacted, but turned into docile streams, flowing into that newly opened Purple Mansion in an orderly manner. Gu Qingxian could clearly feel that his control over power had reached an unprecedentedly terrifying level. As if with just one thought, he could let the power in this sea of energy instantly erupt and destroy everything. All of this sounds long, but in the outside world, it was only about 10 breaths of time. Gu Qingxian slowly opened his eyes, but Gu Changfeng, who was standing opposite him, only saw that Gu Qingshuan's eyes had suddenly changed, and then the aura of his whole person changed earth-shatteringly in an instant. If Gu Qingxian before was a broken sword hidden in a scabbard, then at this moment, he was a peerless fierce weapon unsheathed, sharp edge exposed, killing intent soaring to the sky. Xiandi, you, what on earth have you done? Gu Changfeng was terrified by the aura that suddenly erupted from Gu Qingxian and stepped back repeatedly. clearly. He even saw the air around Gu Qingxian, producing visible distortion due to that invisible power. His eyes were wide open, staring fixedly at Gu Qingxian, his face full of unbelievable amazement. This was not an illusion. He thought of those forbidden techniques in legends that require burning life, and sacrificing souls in exchange for short-term power. Xiandi, don't scare me. Did you use some evil method? Stop quickly. You will die. You will be destroyed in both body and soul. Gu Changfeng scrambled over, wanting to grab Gu Qingxian, but was pushed away by that invisible force field. He was so anxious that tears were about to fall. Crippling cultivation still had a chance to start over, but if that kind of evil technique was used, that would be truly irredeemable. Changfeng Ji, calm down. Gu Qingxuan's voice rang out, as stable as always, yet carrying a power that settled the heart like never before. In his black eyes, there was no madness, no pain, only deep calmness. He looked at the extremely anxious Gu Changfeng. A hint of warmth flowed through his heart. In this cold family, only Changfeng Ji was sincerely thinking for him. I did not use any forbidden techniques. Gu Qingxian gently raised his hand, and the invisible force field that made Gu Changfeng unable to approach vanished instantly. Gu Changfeng was stunned. He could clearly feel that the terrifying pressure had disappeared, released and retracted at will, round and smooth as desired. This did not look like the violent power catalyzed by a forbidden technique at all. The power of a forbidden technique is out of control and destructive. How could it be controlled so precisely? Then Gu Changfeng's brain was blank, completely confused. Everything happening before his eyes had completely exceeded his scope of cognition. A dying man with a crippled dantian, in just a few minutes, not only recovered from his injuries, but also possessed terrifying power that even he felt palpitations about. Who would believe this if said out loud? You don't want to know why I can fight them, right? Gu Qingxian did not explain too much. Explaining was too troublesome, and it was impossible to explain clearly. He reached out directly, and grabbed Gu Changfeng's wrist. The next second, a gentle yet vast spiritual energy, following Gu Qingxuan's palm, slowly flowed into Gu Changfeng's meridians. Gu Changfeng shook his whole body, struck as if by lightning, stiff in place. His eyes opened wider and wider, and his mouth slowly opened, enough to fit an egg. This spiritual energy was incomparably pure and thick, 100 times more majestic than the spiritual energy of the strongest elder in the family he had ever felt. And, although this power was unimaginably huge, it was as docile as a sheep, wandering through his meridians for a circle. Not only did it not cause any damage, instead, it made him feel that his originally somewhat sluggish meridians had become much smoother. How could this be a forbidden technique? This is clearly the cultivation that can only be possessed after many years of hard practice, and an extremely solid foundation. But, how is this possible? Gu Changfeng felt his worldview collapsing. He trembled his lips, struggling to spit out a few words. Yuan Dan realm? No, he has seen family head Gu Zhan attack. Although the power of Yuan Dan realm is strong, but compared with the feeling just now that made him almost suffocate, it is simply a small witch seeing a big witch. Purple Mansion realm? Gu Changfeng's voice already carried a tremor. He was already incoherent. Qingyang City's #1 expert. The city lord is only at Purple Mansion realm level 6. Xiandi, he became a Purple Mansion realm expert. The huge impact caused his brain to crash completely. Hard to digest this heaven-shaking fact. Gu Qingxian did not pay attention to him, just calmly turned around, walking toward the iron bars that had imprisoned him for several days. His footsteps were slow, very steady. Each step seemed to be stepping on past humiliation. A few days ago, the original owner was beaten by the family head to break his limbs, dragged in from outside this door like a dead dog, and thrown onto this cold ground covered in blood. At that time, his dantian was broken, meridians severed, even without the strength to move a finger, only able to bear everything with humiliation. Eyes falling on the sturdy profound iron bars. Gu Qingxuan's eyes sank bit by bit. Under that deep calmness, bone-chilling cold began to brew. The next moment, he swung a palm toward the thick profound iron bars. Terrifying spiritual energy seemed to pour out in an instant. Boom! That prison bar cast from indestructible profound iron, capable of trapping Xiantian realm cultivators, instantly blasted into a mass of black powder, falling to the ground rustlingly. What noise? What happened inside? Just at this moment, two loud shouts came from the entrance of the prison passage. Immediately following, two strong men wearing Gu family guard outfits rushed and holding long sabers. With heavy footsteps, they were the confidants of family head Gu Hongyao, both with cultivation at Qi Condensation Realm Level 7, responsible for guarding this most important dungeon. The two rushed into the passage, saw the scene inside at a glance. Then, their footsteps seemed to be nailed to the ground, stopping sharply. What did they see? That waste Gu Qingxian, who had his limbs broken, was standing there completely unharmed, and the profound iron bar in front of him that should have locked him firmly, was gone, only leaving black powder on the ground. The two were first stunned hard, then infinite horror and terror surged on their faces. What happened? That profound iron bar was something that even Xiantian elders were helpless about. How could it turn into powder on the ground? One of the guards who reacted faster, his face turned pale instantly, without saying a word, turned around and ran out. Quick! I'm going to report to the family head and elders. Something big happened here. And the other guard was scared out of his wits by this strange scene, but Duty-bound, he still strengthened his courage, hands holding the hilt tightly, roaring at Gu Qingxian with false bravado. Gu Qingxian, you traitor of the family, what do you want to do? Stand still, don't even think about leaving here half a step. His voice was loud, but the slightly trembling tip of the saber exposed his inner fear. However, Gu Qingxian from beginning to end did not even give them a trace of the corner of his eye. Mere chi condensation realm cultivators, at this moment were just two noisy flies. He took his steps, walking straight toward the outside of the passage. Stand still. I told you to stand still. Are you looking for death? The family guard saw that he was completely ignored. Under the intertwining of shame, anger, and fear, issued a roar, mobilizing his full spiritual energy, raising his saber to hack over. Gu Qingshuan's footsteps did not stop, even did not turn his head. He just did it at the moment he passed by the guard. Casually, waved his sleeve, just like brushing a speck of dust off his shoulder. An invisible terrifying force, like a burst flood, instantly slapped on the two guards. Puff, puff. Two muffled sounds rang out almost at the same time. The protective spiritual energy on the two guards was like bubbles under the sun, not even able to hold on for an instant, shattered accordingly. Following that, their chests sank deeply at an arc visible to the naked eye. A large mist of blood sprayed from their mouths. The whole person, like a kite with a broken string, flew out backward. Bang, bang. The two heavy bodies slammed heavily against the hard stone wall, making a bone-cracking sound that made one's teeth ache, then slid softly to the ground, completely fainting, dead or alive unknown. From beginning to end, Gu Qingshuan's footsteps did not have a trace of pause. He walked through the long passage, ignoring Gu Chongfeng behind him, who had turned into a statue, like a wooden sculpture. When the first ray of sunlight shone on his face through the exit of the prison, he narrowed his eyes slightly. The air of freedom is really good. Xian Di. Gu Chongfeng finally found a little of his own voice. He staggered and chased out, standing in the shadow of the prison, not daring to step into the sunlight, asking with a trembling voice, where are you going? Gu Qingxian stopped, but did not look back, only leaving a calm sentence that made Gu Chongfeng feel cold all over. Chongfeng Ji, you just stay here. Next, I will personally clear the house. At the same time, Gu family, inside a luxurious courtyard. In the courtyard were pavilions and water pavilions, rockeries and flowing water. The sound of silk and bamboo was endless, forming a sharp contrast with the darkness of the dungeon. Several young men wearing silk and satin were sitting crookedly around a white jade stone table, in their arms, each holding a slim and graceful beauty with revealing clothes, drinking, playing and making trouble, having a great time. The one in the lead, his face was of low class, but between his brows carried a stubbornness and gloom that could not be dispelled. He was the young master of the Gu family who was currently at the height of his popularity. Gu Yuntian. Damn it. Gu Yuntian slammed the glass cup in his hand heavily on the table, a few drops of fragrant wine splashing out, his face full of impatience. Can't even get out of the door these days, staying in this courtyard. This young master is almost bored to death. The irritability in his voice made the woman in his arms stiffen, quickly kneading his shoulders more diligently. Beside him, a young man with a goat beard, immediately over full of flattery, smiling slyly. Young master, calm down, calm down. The family head is also doing this for your own good. Once this current limelight passes, in this Qingyang city, isn't it wherever you want to go? Who dares to stop you? Another young man with a sharp-mouthed and monkey-cheeked face also quickly followed up, winking and lowering his voice. Exactly, young master, I have inquired about it. The Zuhua Pavilion in the south of the city has recently arrived a new top brand. I heard that figure, that face. TSK. It's simply a celestial immortal descending to earth. Once you can go out, the first thing should be to go and have a good favor. Open her eyes. Oh, as soon as Gu Yuntian heard this, the impatience on his face was swept away instantly, replaced by a look of pride and lascivious smile. He reached out and pinched the face of the woman in his arms, causing the other party to call out, then laughed out loud. That is natural. The woman this young master fancies has never been able to run away. The atmosphere at the wine table became enthusiastic again. After 3 rounds of drinks, 5 flavors of food, a young man sitting at the end, only sipping lightly from beginning to end, looking quite shrewd, slowly put down his wine cup. He glanced at the complacent Gu Yuntian, a look of worry appearing on his face. Hesitating for a moment, he still couldn't help opening his mouth. Young master. His voice was not loud, but made the noisy wine table quiet down a little. Gu Yuntian squinted at him, somewhat displeased. What is it? Zhang Imo. If you have something to say, say it. If you have a fart, let it out. Don't spoil this young master's mood here. The young man named Zhang Imo took a deep breath, his body leaning forward slightly, lowering his voice. Young master, this time, we pushed Gu Qingxian that waste out to take the blame and die. Is it really foolproof? Hearing the name Gu Qingxian, the smile on Gu Yuntian's face disappeared instantly, replaced by a thick sneer and disdain. Foolproof? Are you kidding this young master? He seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. A waist whose dantian was destroyed, meridians severed, even his 4 limbs were broken. Can he turn the sky? Zhang Mo shook his head stubbornly, his voice lowered even more, almost only they could hear it. Young master, what I'm worried about is not Gu Qingxian. What I'm worried about is his father, Gu Zhanyuan. When the last 3 words were spit out from Zhang Mo's mouth. It seemed to carry a strange magic. Buzz. The whole wine table instantly died down. The sound of silk and bamboo that was still playing just now had stopped at some unknown time. Those, still posing, laughing and chatting women, at this moment felt the change in the atmosphere. One by one silenced like cicadas, not even daring to breathe loudly. The smile on Gu Yuntian's face also solidified completely. That is right, young master. The young man with sharp-mouthed and monkey-cheeked face before, at this moment had no more lewdness on his face, only a kind of fear originating from his bones. His voice was trembling. Gu Zhanyuan, the prestige of that person back then. We have all heard from our elders. If he comes back from training outside, knowing that his own son was harmed by us like this, then wouldn't he overturn the whole Gu family? The 4 words, bloody storm. He didn't even dare to say it out loud. The young men in silk robes present, each face was uglier than the other, all becoming heavy. Although they are young, but they grew up hearing the legend of the name Gu Zhanyuan. Zhang Mo's face was also a bit pale. He swallowed his saliva, and continued to supplement. More than 10 years ago, 4 major families stood in Qingyang City. Gu family was only ranked at the bottom, at any time likely to be swallowed by the other 3 families. It was Gu Zhanyuan, relying entirely on his pair of iron fists, hardly beat the Li family, flattened the Wang family, forcing the Zhao family to bow down and submit. Only then did the Gu family have the status of being the only one in Qingyang City today. Back then, how many elders and clansmen of the Gu family recommended him to be the family head? It was he himself who was unwilling, actively gave the position to his own older brother, that is, the current family head. A few words made everyone present fall into silence. Gu Zhanyuan, this name, is like an insurmountable mountain, heavily pressing on everyone's heart. That is a man who relied on his own power, changed the pattern of the whole Qingyang City, a peerless ferocious man who is decisive in killing and mighty in all directions. Gu Qingxian is a waste now, that is correct, but this waste's father is a dragon that crosses the river that no one dares to provoke easily. For a time, the wine is not fragrant, the women are not charming. Everyone's mind started to imagine uncontrollably after that man returned, knowing the bad news, the scene of thunderous rage, that deep-rooted fear and worry, made the atmosphere of the whole courtyard extremely depressing. Heh, a sneering laugh full of sarcasm, squeezed out from Gu Yuntian's throat, like a knife scraping across iron skin, harsh and unpleasant. He picked up the wine cup on the table, slowly shook it, wine tracing marks on the cup wall. Look at your pathetic appearance. He squinted at everyone, his tone carrying a playfulness like a cat catching a mouse. Do you really think my father does things will be so careless? As soon as this was said, those who were panicked raised their heads in unison, their eyes all gathered on Gu Yuntian. Even Zhang Imo, who had been frowning tightly, also revealed a probing expression. Gu Yuntian enjoyed this feeling of being the focus. He deliberately sold a mystery, lowered his voice, carrying a tone of mystery and showing off. Do you really think the family head just simply pushed Gu Qingxian that waste out to die? The sharp-mouthed and monkey-cheeked young man was the first to react, asking tentatively, young master, do you mean there is another trick in this? Nonsense. Gu Yuntian gave him a white eye, his face reappearing with the pride of controlling everything. He put down the wine cup, his body leaning forward, his voice lowered even more, as if sharing an earth-shattering secret. Gu Qingxian is a waste, correct, but in the clan, what does he represent? He paused, without waiting for everyone to answer. He said it himself. What he represents is Gu Zhanyuan, is the little thought in the hearts of those old guys who should have been swept into the trash heap more than 10 years ago. You won't really think those elders who recommended Gu Zhanyuan to be the family head back then, my father will always tolerate them, right? As soon as this was said, Zhang Mo's face changed slightly, seeming to think of something. Gu Yuntian took all his reactions into his eyes. The smile on his face became even more intense. These years, what do you think my father has been doing? Enjoying peace? Being a hands-off shopkeeper? He picked up the wine cup, lightly took a sip, his eyes revealing a gloominess inconsistent with his age. I tell you, my father has long since used various means, either overtly or covertly. Those who rely on the old and sell the old, stubborn and unyielding old guys, one by one, all were settled clean. Boom. This word was like a thunderbolt, exploding in everyone's mind. The young people present, including Zhang Imo, all could not help but gasp. They only knew that these years, quite a few elders in the family were transferred away from the family due to various reasons, or closed death meditation, but never thought that behind this was the family head Gu Hongyao. Such ruthless and bloody means, without everyone noticing, the family head had already completed a great cleaning of the power of the whole family. For a time, their awe for the family head Gu Hongyao instantly suppressed their fear of the legendary Gu Zhanyuan. That is a kind of direct, most primitive fear for the power holder who is waiting for the dawn beside them. Looking at their shocked expressions, the jealousy in Gu Yuntian's heart had long since vanished, replaced by endless gratification and pride. This is his father, planning and strategizing, with heavenly means. He continued to increase the stakes, pouring out the whole plan. The reason why we only move Gu Qingxian now, is because the timing is already mature. My father wants to borrow the pressure of Qing Tian sect's questioning, in front of the whole clan, in front of all the powers of the whole Qingyang city, righteously execute Gu Qingxian. Gu Yuntian stood up, looking down down at everyone from a high position. His voice not loud, but word by word. Each word was like a heavy hammer, smashing hard into everyone's hearts. This is announcing to the whole Gu family, to the whole Qingyang city. From now on, the Gu family will have no Gu Zhanyuan. No one can threaten my father's position. After speaking, he arrogantly swept around. Finally, his gaze fell on the few followers who were already dumbfounded, and added another sentence, his voice full of infinite ambition and dominance. And no one can shake my Gu Yuntian's identity as the young family head. These words completely revealed the mystery. Those present were not stupid, instantly understood the point. These years, after family head Gu Hongyao took over the family, the prestige of the Gu family was indeed not as good as before, even showing signs of decline. Undercurrents surged in Qingyang city. Quite a few people were discussing in private. If Gu Zhanyuan, who was decisive in killing back then, had become the family head, how could the Gu family be like this? Afraid that it would have unified Qingyang long ago, and gone to the next level. These rumors were undoubtedly a poisonous thorn stuck in the current family head Gu Hongyao's heart. And now, he used such a resolute way, announcing his absolute rule. So that is how it is. So that is how it is. The young man with sharp-mouthed and monkey-cheeked face was the first to react. The shocked expression on his face instantly turned into enthusiastic worship. He slapped his thigh, stood up excitedly. Family head is far-sighted, planning and strategizing. This move of drawing firewood from under the cauldron is simply a divine brush. Yes, yes, we were still worrying about Gu Zhanyuan here. Little did we know that the family head had already calculated everything, even digging up the roots. Still afraid that he, a leaf, can turn the sky. Young master is destined to return. With you and the family head, what are we Gu family afraid of not being able to reappear? Glory. High. It is truly high. For a time, flattery surged like a tide. More enthusiastic than any time before. More sincere. That kind of awe and flattery from the bottom of his heart made the atmosphere of the whole courtyard boil again. The previous haze was swept away. The atmosphere at the wine table was even 100 times hotter than at the beginning. Women surrounded them again. The sound of silk and bamboo started again. The sound of dissolute music was endless. Gu Yuntian sat down full of pride, left and right hugging, drank a glass of fine wine in one gulp, feeling the whole body comfortable, unprecedentedly refreshed. He glanced at the people who had started to liven up the atmosphere again. Finally, his gaze fell on Zhang Mo, who was still a bit silent, carrying a bit of drunkenness, also carrying a bit of beating meaning. Why, Zhang Mo, do you still think now that there is anything inappropriate? In an instant, everyone's gaze converged on Zhang Mo. The sound of silk and bamboo seemed to be infinitely distanced at this moment. In Zhang Mo's ears, only the sound of his own heart beating like a drum remained. The color on his face faded completely in a flash, and a layer of fine cold sweat seeped from his temples. Inappropriate? How could he dare to think there was anything inappropriate now? Gu Yuntian's words just now did not only reveal the conspiracy to execute Gu Qingxian, but also the unfathomable shrewdness and ruthless methods of the family head, Gu Hongyao. Over these years, everyone thought the family head was enduring, was wary of Gu Zhanyuan's remaining prestige, but who could have guessed? He wasn't enduring at all, but was sharpening his blade, a blade to slaughter all dissidents. Those elders who were transferred away, closed off in death meditation, or dismissed, were actually all liquidated by the family head using iron-blooded means, without anyone realizing it. Gu Hongyao had long since firmly grasped the entire Gu family in his own hands, becoming an autocratic ruler whose word was final. Compared to such a power holder lurking by his side, that Gu Zhanyuan, who was far away, and whose life or death was unknown, what did he amount to? Zhang Yimou felt a chill rush from the soles of his feet straight to his skull. He finally understood how ridiculous his previous worries were, and how dangerous they were. He was questioning the family head's decision. He was pleading for the remnants of Gu Zhanyuan. In front of a family head who had completed a power purge and reached the pinnacle of prestige, his behavior was no different from repeatedly jumping on the edge of a cliff. No, there is nothing inappropriate. Absolutely nothing. Zhang Yimou shuddered, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He sprang up from his seat abruptly. The movement was so violent that he even knocked over the chair behind him. He couldn't care about picking it up. He squeezed out a smile uglier than crying, and bowed deeply to Gu Yuntian. Young master, it is I who am stupid. It is I who am short-sighted. It is I who failed to recognize greatness. He backhanded himself with a loud slap. The sound was crisp. The family head is far-sighted. Planning and strategizing, such divine foresight, is not something a mortal like me can fathom. Saying this, he snatched the wine pot from the table beside him, not bothering to use a cup. He grabbed 3 empty wine cups directly, filling them brimful with 3 cups of strong liquor. Young master, forgive me. Zhang Mo deserves to die. I punish myself with 3 cups. To apologize to the young master. Before the words finished, he tilted his neck back. Gulp, gulp. He poured 3 cups of strong liquor down his throat in a row. The pungent wine liquid felt like a knife cutting through his esophagus, choking him until his face turned red, coughing violently, tears even bursting out. But he dared not stop. While coughing, he continued to express his loyalty. Young master is a heaven-sent talent. Cough, cough. With you and the family head, our Gu family, cough. How could we not flourish? Looking at Zhang Mo's wretched and ridiculous appearance, the slight grudge in Gu Yuntian's heart, born from Zhang Mo's previous silence, finally finally dissipated completely. This was the effect he wanted. He wanted everyone to understand who the true master of the Gu family was. Ha ha ha. Gu Yuntian burst into a burst of extremely satisfied laughter. He walked up, like soothing a dog. He patted the shoulder of Zhang Yimou, who was still coughing heavily. Those who realize their mistakes and change are truly commendable. Sit down and talk. This combination of grace and power made the others present feel an even greater shock. When they looked at Gu Yuntian, there was a hint of fanaticism mixed into their awe. Young master is magnanimous. Yes, for Zhang Yimou to be reprimanded like this by the young master, it is truly a blessing earned from 8 lifetimes. The flattery surged like a tide again, even more nauseating than any time before, even more blatant. Stimulated by alcohol and the sycophancy of the crowd, Gu Yuntian's vanity swelled to the extreme, and that vicious thought also grew more and more vigorous. He felt that just revealing his father's plan didn't seem exciting enough. He slowly raised his hand, pressing it down. The noisy courtyard quieted down instantly. Everyone held their breath, watching him eagerly, not even daring to blink, afraid of missing a single word. The big news revealed today was already shocking enough. Could there be a scoop even more explosive than the family head purging the family elders? Gu Yuntian was very satisfied with their reaction. He picked up the wine cup, shook it gently, keeping everyone's appetite whetted to the limit. He spoke slowly, his voice carrying a hint of playfulness. You all still remember 5 years ago, my good second uncle, Gu Zhanyuan, who was hailed as the genius not seen in 100 years in Qingyang City. How he disappeared, right? Hearing this, a look of confusion appeared on several people's faces. 5 years ago, a rare beast tide suddenly broke out in the Yunya mountain range. Gu Zhanyuan, then the #1 general of the Gu family, to protect the family disciples entering the mountains for training, alone covered the retreat, battled the beast tide. Since then, there had been no news, missing without a trace. This is a story known to everyone in the whole Qingyang city. Gu Yuntian at this time, what is the meaning of mentioning his disappearance? Everyone's hearts were full of doubts. Gu Yuntian took all their expressions into his eyes. The curve of his mouth spread even wider. It was a twisted pleasure mixed with showing off and cruelty. He drank the wine in the cup in one gulp, then slammed the cup heavily onto the table, with a bang, making everyone's heart tremble along with it. He leaned forward, lowered his voice, and spat out an earth-shattering truth word by word. Publicly it was announced that in order to cover for the family disciples, he fought the sudden beast tide, and then there was no news. But the truth is, that beast tide was lured by me. The moment the words fell, the whole world seemed to have been pressed on pause. The sound of silk and bamboo stopped abruptly. Everyone did not expect that he would throw out such an earth-shattering scoop. Gu Yuntian enjoyed this feeling very much, enjoying the pleasure of playing with everyone in the palm of his hand. He wanted this shock, this subversion of cognition. He leaned back in his chair comfortably, arms spread out on both sides, like an artist appreciating his masterpiece, speaking leisurely, the voice not loud, but clearly drilling into everyone's ears. Wanting to lure a beast tide actually is not difficult. Deep in the Yunya mountain range, there is a special associated mineral, called blood-red demon crystal, which has a deadly attraction to demon beasts above the 3rd rank, and this mineral will emit a type of colorless and odorless powder, imperceptible to humans and livestock, only detectable by demon beasts. He paused, seeming to savor the feat of the year. I just spent a little time collecting a small pinch of that powder, and while the family disciples were training, quietly sprinkled it on their only path. Very simple, isn't it? Simple? Zhang Yimou and the others felt their scalps tingle. Where is this simple? This is calculating and premeditated. It is insane, using the lives of the entire training team as bait, just to plot against one person. Gu Yuntian looked at their pale faces. His smile grew thicker. Of course, I have to admit, my good second uncle, Gu Zhanyuan, really had some skills, deserving to be the former #1 general of the Gu family, the genius not seen in 100 years in Qingyang City. His tone carried a hint of strange admiration, as if evaluating an interesting toy. The beast tide erupted. That scene, TSK, was truly magnificent. To protect that group of waste disciples, he actually really chose to cover the retreat alone. With only the cultivation of Xiantian realm level 8, he stiffly withstood the impact of hundreds of demon beasts. Simply not human. Hearing this, the hearts of a few people were slightly relieved. It turned out Gu Zhanyuan still died in the beast tide, although the process was a bit tortuous, but the result was the same. However, Gu Yuntian's next words were like a basin of ice water, drenching them from head to toe. But he was just that strong. Gu Yuntian's tone shifted. His voice suddenly became cold, carrying a snake-like hissing sound. He actually really fought a way out, and survived from the beast tide. What? Everyone's pupils shrank. Gu Zhanyuan didn't die. Then after he really comes back, I am afraid he will bloodwash the Gu family's upper echelons. Although he survived, but he was also crippled, covered in blood, spiritual energy exhausted, couldn't even stand still. No different from a dead dog. Gu Yuntian slowly stood up, a morbid and twisted aftertaste appearing on his face. He lowered his body, leaning toward the crowd, spat out the cruelest truth word by word, and I followed right behind him. The temperature of the entire courtyard seemed to have dropped to the freezing point. Zhang Yimou felt his teeth trembling uncontrollably. Gu Yuntian stretched out his right hand, made a gesture in the air, as if holding an invisible knife. His movements were slow, every detail detail filled with a sense of ritual. At the moment he thought he finally escaped death. At his weakest, most unguarded time, his wrist suddenly stabbed downward. I stepped forward, and from behind, gave him a fatal blow. He even added a sound effect himself, his face showing an intoxicated expression like seeing the most beautiful picture in the world. He smacked his lips, sking in wonder, as if tasting some peerless delicacy. You all didn't see it. His expression when he turned back. That kind of disbelief. That transformation from hope to despair. TSK. Simply the most brilliant performance I have ever seen in my life. Gulp. Zhang Mo could no longer hold it. He swallowed his saliva hard, his Adam's apple rolling violently up and down. He looked at this young man, smiling brightly, gesturing vividly as he told how he personally killed his own uncle. A chill rushed from the soles of his feet straight to his skull. This is no longer an arrogant and domineering rich kid. This is fundamentally a through and through inhuman devil who takes pleasure in torturing others. This secret, I am afraid, besides the Gu family head, only these lucky ones, know. And what is the fate of knowing this secret? Either die, or only be able to become the dogs of this pair of devil father and son wholeheartedly. Zhang Mo's waist bent even lower, almost sticking to the desktop. Gu Yuntian was very satisfied with his reaction. He stood up straight, casually grabbed the hand of a beautiful maid beside him who was scared out of her wits, put it to his mouth and kissed it wantonly, causing that woman to tremble. He smiled evilly, his gaze sweeping over everyone present, as if announcing a trivial matter. Right, the day for the execution of my good cousin is set for 3 days later. I have to occupy a good seat, and enjoy his expression before he dies. Gu Yuntian licked his lips, eyes flashing with excited and cruel light. Presumably, it will surely be very wonderful too. The dead silence was broken instantly. Zhang Mo was the first to react, immediately loudly echoing, "Young master is right. What is that, Gu Qingxian?" Being able to let the young master personally watch the execution is the greatest honor of his life. Being able to add to the young master's fun can be considered dying in his place. The flattery surged like a tide again. Only this time, the content of the words had become incomparably twisted and morbid. The atmosphere in the whole courtyard, under the intertwining of fear and sycophancy, became fanatical and strange. Zhang Mo and the others, in order to survive, and to please the capricious devil in front of them, racked their brains to compose all kinds of unbearable language, to humiliate Gu Qingxian, who had already been beaten into hell. Gu Yuntian leaned on the main seat, left and right hugging, listening to the twisted flattery in his ears. The smile on his face grew more evil. He enjoyed this feeling of trampling on other people's dignity under his feet, and then watching others become just as crazy as him to please himself. Just amidst this dissolute music, a shadow, incompatible with the surrounding luxurious atmosphere, silently appeared at the gate of the courtyard. Hiccup. A follower was drunk, just holding up his wine cup, preparing to say a few more vulgar words to liven up the mood, when his peripheral vision caught a glimpse of something unusual at the gate. He stopped, rubbed his blurred drunken eyes, stretched out his finger pointing in that direction, his tongue a bit thick. Is there someone standing there? His voice was not loud, but everyone present was a cultivator, their hearing far exceeding ordinary people. The noisy atmosphere appeared a trace of imperceptible stagnation. Everyone subconsciously looked in the direction his finger pointed. In the sunlight, in the shadow of the corner of the courtyard gate, there was indeed a silhouette of a person. That person's hair was messy, the clothes on his body were tattered, also stained with blood, forming a sharp contrast with the carved beams and painted pillars, and the luxurious food here. What blind thing dares to break into this young master's place? Gu Yuntian was enjoying himself, being disturbed. A look of thick impatience appeared on his face instantly. He casually pushed away the maid in his arms, and scolded impatiently. Where did the beggar come from? Get out for this young master. The trailing sound of the word out was still echoing in the air, but his voice seemed to be suddenly strangled by an invisible hand, stopping abruptly, because, as that silhouette stepped into the courtyard, the sunlight finally illuminated his face. That is a face that everyone present was incomparably familiar with, yet absolutely should not have appeared here. That face is exactly the one he was just talking about with great interest, that one who should have had his dantian destroyed, 4 limbs broken, and locked in the deepest dungeon of the Gu family like a dead dog. Gu Qingxian. Clang. I don't know whose wine cup slipped from his hand, making a harsh crisp sound in the silent courtyard. On the faces of Zhang Mo and the others, the flattering smile had not yet faded, stiffly frozen on the corners of their mouths, the expression ridiculous and terrifying. The whole courtyard, deadly silent. Everyone thought they had drunk too much, and had hallucinations. Some even pinched themselves hard. Severe pain came, but the silhouette in front of them did not disappear. How could it be? A waist whose dantian was destroyed, tendons and bones severed. How could he break free from the shackles of the dungeon? And how could he stand here completely unharmed? This is not logical. This is fundamentally impossible. Gu Qingxian just stood there, letting several skeptical gazes focus on himself. The prison clothes on his body were covered with mottled blood stains. Some had already dried, turning into dark brown, but he just stood there, body straight, like a revenge statue climbing back to the human world step by step from the Shura hell, the whole body emitting a heart-palpitating smell of blood. The temperature that had risen due to drinking and fanaticism, at this moment dropped to the freezing point. The drunken intent in everyone's brains was dispersed completely under the impact of this was bone-deep horror, leaving only cold sobriety and greater fear. Under the horrified gaze of everyone, Gu Qingxian moved. He lifted his foot, took the first step. That step was very light, falling into the courtyard paved with bluestone slabs, almost hearing no sound. But this step seemed to have stepped on everyone's heart, turning that just ceased noise completely into nothingness. His gaze, from beginning to end, locked onto the Gu Yuntian on the main seat, whose face turned from red to white, and from white to blue. Finally, when he was 10 meters away from Gu Yuntian, he stopped. The silhouette that had been silent finally had a voice. "Everything you just said, is it true?" His throat, as if it had not been used for a long time, and as if it had been ground by sandpaper, hoarse, dry. But in this hoarse voice, there was a coldness that could drill into one's bones, making the temperature of the whole courtyard seem to drop a few more degrees. This sentence was like a thunderbolt, exploding directly in Gu Yuntian's ears. Not a hallucination. This was all not a hallucination. A cold chill rushed from the soles of his feet straight to his skull, instantly clutching his heart, making his breathing suffocate. He sprang up from that large main seat. Gu Qingxian, Gu Yuntian, roared with false bravado, trying to use volume to cover up the trembling in his voice. "How could you have escaped from the dungeon?" He stared fixedly at Gu Qingxian, his eyes full of shock and disbelief. Immediately, his finger pointed fiercely at Gu Qingxuan's intact four limbs, his voice becoming sharp because of excitement. "And your injuries, your dantian, how is it possible? How could you have all healed? A guy whose four limbs were broken, and cultivation destroyed, how could he escape the dungeon, and even appear in front of him with injuries healed?" Moreover, this Gu Qingxian in front of him, stood straight, his aura steady. Where is there any sign of a waist? This completely subverted his cognition. However, facing his series of questions, Gu Qingxian seemed not to have heard at all. In those deep pupils of his, there was no emotional fluctuation. He moved, lifting his foot again, walking toward Gu Yuntian. Footsteps unhurried. One step, two steps, like the steps of a devil. When he was only 3 meters away from Gu Yuntian, Gu Qingxian spoke again, his voice even colder than before. "I only ask you one question. Is what you said just now true?" Gu Yuntian's face was ferocious, pointing at Gu Qingxian, shouting angrily, "Take him for me. Destroy him. I want him to kneel on the ground, and explain clearly what is going on." Receiving Gu Yuntian's order, two lackeys at the late stage of chi condensation realm looked at each other, seeing a hint of ruthlessness in each other's eyes. This Gu Qingxian in front of them was a bit strange, but so what? A person whose dantian was destroyed, and limbs were severed, even if he stood up using some evil method, he was ultimately an empty shell, in front of absolute strength. All crooked ways are just earthen dogs and wooden chickens. Waste, putting on a show. One of them took the lead and roared, stomping his feet fiercely. The bluestone slab ground instantly cracked, and he pounced toward Gu Qingxian like a tiger out of a cage. The other one was even more insidious. His figure flickered, ghost-like circling to the other side of Gu Qingxian. 5 fingers turned into claws, with tricky force, directly targeting Gu Qingxuan's dantian vital point. The two were left and right, cooperating tacitly, obviously often doing such dirty work. There was not the slightest mercy in their moves, all targeting the destruction of cultivation, and ending life. Gu Yuntian's mouth curled into a ferocious grin. He already saw the silhouette that had just stood up, being beaten back into the mud, inviting an even more tragic ending. However, facing this left-right pincer attack that could split monuments and stones, Gu Qingxuan's footsteps actually did not have even a trace of pause. He didn't even look at those two ants pouncing on him, those deep eyes of his, still calmly watching Gu Yuntian in front, as if those two aggressive disciples of late chi condensation realm were just two insignificant flies. Just as the fists and claws of the two were about to touch his body, Gu Qingxian finally had an action. He just raised his arm casually, then waved his hand. This action, simple to the extreme, just like brushing dust off his clothes, without a trace of fireworks. But just as his palm pushed out, an indescribable terrifying power suddenly descended. The two of them couldn't even make a scream, instantly turning into two groups of bursting blood mist. Thick blood mist, spread in midair, drifting toward all sides with a warm smell of blood. Seeing such a shocking scene, Gu Yuntian's lips trembled, his heart beating wildly. He didn't understand. He completely didn't understand what was going on. Wasn't Gu Qingxian a waste? Why would a waste have such terrifying strength? Even he himself could never reach this level. The terrifying power just now could never be lower than what a Yuan Dan realm expert could release, even above it. At the same time, Zhang Yimou and the other youth beside him were both scared out of their wits. They widened their eyes, eyeballs almost popping out of their sockets, looking at Gu Qingxian like a monster, trembling like fallen leaves in the wind, even forgetting to breathe. Two late chi condensation realm disciples, looking at the younger generation in Qingyang City, could be considered famous, but now they were just like that, turned into blood mist by a single palm from that former waist. An indescribable chill rushed from the soles of his feet straight to his skull, making several people tremble. The few slim beauties who accompanied the wine were even more scared out of their wits, screaming and running toward the back. No, impossible. A dry murmur issued from Gu Yuntian's throat. He subconsciously retreated, stumbling under his feet, actually falling to the ground on his butt. In a mess, he pointed at Gu Qingxian, his fingers trembling like fallen leaves in the autumn wind. What did you do? Everything completely exceeded his scope of cognition. However, Gu Qingxian ignored his hysteria. His footsteps lifted again, continuing to walk toward Gu Yuntian. Watching that silhouette getting closer, the shadow of death completely shrouded Gu Yuntian. Following that, an uncontrollable hot current surged out from under his crotch. He was actually scared into peeing. Stand still. You stand still. Gu Yuntian was completely panicked. He used his hands and feet to crawl backward on the ground, wanting to be far away from that silhouette. Further and further, he turned his head toward the other two lackeys in the courtyard who were already scared stupid, roaring with all his strength. Zhang Mo, Gu Zhang, what are you two doing still stunned? Are you dead people? Go up. Stop him. Whoever can stop him. I will reward him with 500 spirit stones. No, 1,000. Zhang Mo and Gu Zhang, who were called by name, shuddered and came back to their senses. The two looked at each other. What they saw in each other's eyes was the same unconcealable fear. Go up? Are you kidding? How the two brothers at the late stage of Qi condensation realm died just now. They saw, clearly, their cultivation. One at Qi condensation realm level 4. One at Qi condensation realm level 6. Worse than the two just now. Going up now. What is the difference from actively seeking death? Forget about 1,000 spirit stones. Even if it was 10,000 spirit stones, one must have a life to spend it. The two's legs went soft, teeth chattering up and down, not to mention stepping forward. Even standing was almost impossible, just shaking their heads constantly. Waste. All of you are waste. Gu Yuntian saw the reactions of the two, cursing in anger, his face full of despair. He knew, relying on these two greedy for life and afraid of death lackeys was useless. In the flash of lightning, a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. Run. Must run immediately. This Gu Qingxian is no longer someone he can deal with. He must have used some forbidden technique or obtained some peerless opportunity. Must tell his father this news. As long as his father makes a move, the monster in front of him will surely die, and will die more miserably than anyone else. Thinking of this, he no longer had the slightest hesitation. Biting his teeth fiercely, divine sense probed into his storage ring. The next moment, two profound lights flashed. A piece of yellow talisman paper engraved with complicated runes appeared in his hand. Small teleportation talisman. Once activated, it could instantly teleport him dozens of feet away. Besides this, there was also a protective talisman capable of blocking a full-strength blow from a mid-yuan Dan realm expert. He used all his strength, frenetically injecting spiritual energy into the two talismans. Gu Qingxian, you waste. You wait for me. When I report to the family head, I will definitely pull your tendons and peel your skin, make you unable to live, unable to die. The light on the talismans grew brighter. Even space began to show a trace of slight distortion. Gu Yuntian seemed to have already seen himself successfully escaping, bringing a group of family elders to execute Gu Qingxian. However, just at the moment the talisman was about to be completely activated, Gu Qingxian's silhouette, like a ghost, arrived in front of him. He saw him grinning at Gu Yuntian. Sorry, I am afraid you are a little too happy too early. The person who will be unable to live and unable to die in a while will be you. Under the gaze of Gu Yuntian's eyes full of shock, Gu Qingxian stretched out his hand, directly using spiritual energy to destroy the two talismans in succession. No! Gu Yuntian's pupils expanded greatly, screaming in despair. He looked at Gu Qingxian, who was looking down at him from a high position. Cold sweat instantly soaked his back. Qingxian, cousin, I was wrong. I was really wrong. I was drunk just now. Everything I said was drunk nonsense. You must not take it seriously, must not take it to heart. While he said this, he kowtowed crazily, his forehead hitting the ground with a thud, soon kowtowing blood. We are brothers, broken bones, still connected by tendons. We are own brothers. The arrogance and domineering of the past, and being peerless, at this moment vanished without a trace. He just wanted to live. Looking at this cousin kneeling on the ground, snot and tears flowing, looking ugly, a smile slowly appeared on his face. That smile, without a trace of temperature, instead carrying a cruelty that made Gu Yuntian's soul tremble. No matter what you say now, you are going to die today, and I will not let you die quickly. A simple sentence completely shattered the last trace of luck in Gu Yuntian's heart. The next second, Gu Qingxian kicked Gu Yuntian's chest fiercely. Bang! An irresistible huge force came from his chest. Snap! The sound of crisp bone cracking, connected into one piece. Gu Yuntian only felt that his internal organs seemed to be hit by a giant hammer. Instantly displaced, his whole person flew out backward like a broken sack. In midair, he sprayed a large mouthful of blood mixed with pieces of internal organs. Boom rumble. Gu Yuntian slammed heavily into a rockery in the corner of the courtyard. Countless stones mixed with smoke and dust soared into the sky, completely submerging him. Zhang Mo and the others beside him trembled even more violently. In the pile of rubble filled with smoke and dust, came a painful coughing sound. Cough, 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 accompanied by violent coughing. Gu Yuntian struggled, sticking half of his body out from a pile of scattered stones. His current appearance was miserable to the extreme, covered in dust and blood, and his chest was sunken at a weird angle. Every breath, there was blood mixed with shredded meat constantly out from his mouth. death. Gu Yuntian knew that he could not escape today. The shadow of death enveloped him like reality. Don't kill me. A kind of instinctive desire to survive made him speak again, his voice hoarse and broken. Tears and snot mixed with blood covered his whole face. Qingxian, cousin, please, don't kill me. Whatever you want, I can give it to you. Money, resources of our Gu family, I will give it all to you. And women, the most beautiful woman in Qingyang City, I will find her for you. Status, as long as you let me go, in the Gu family in the future, you are the boss. I will be your dog. He pleaded incoherently. All the dignity and pride of being the young master of the Gu family in the past, at this moment were torn to pieces by himself, discarded like worn-out shoes. Gu Qingxian looked at the man on the ground with snot and tears, completely discarding his dignity. His heart had not a trace of ripple. He just walked over calmly, looking down from a high position, at that face stained with blood and dust. Cousin. Gu Qingxian repeated this title, the voice not high, but made Gu Yuntian's whole body stiffen. You now, still know to call me cousin? Gu Qingshuan's voice was very flat, unable to hear joy or anger, but every word was like an invisible hammer, smashing into Gu Yuntian's heart. I was wrong. Qingxian, I was really wrong. Gu Yuntian was still instinctively pleading. He knew that the motivation here would surely attract the attention of family elders. As long as he delayed until the elders arrived, he would have a glimmer of life. Gu Qingxian ignored his false repentance, speaking on his own. Do you still remember when you were 13? A big illness, high fever not subsiding. All the doctors in the city were helpless, saying you could not be saved. Gu Qingxian cast his gaze toward the distant night sky, as if recalling something from a long time ago. It was my father, who went alone into the dangerous depths of the Tianfeng mountain range, staying in it for 7 days and 7 nights, 9 deaths and 1 life. Only then did he find that Huiyang grass to continue your life. It can be said that your life was grabbed back from the hands of the king of hell by my father for you. However, Gu Qingshuan's gaze finally retracted, landing back on Gu Yuntian's face, his eyes only having endless coldness. You not only never thought of repaying the debt of gratitude, but even designed to kill him personally, making such a pig-and-dog inferior thing. Can you sleep at night? These words, like thunder, exploded in Gu Yuntian's mind. The blood color on his face faded clean, only remaining the paleness like a dead person. No, it is not. He was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, screaming, it was my father. All of it was my father who asked me to do it. I dared not disobey. Qingxian, cousin, if you want revenge, you should go find him. Grievances have heads, debts have owners. To survive, he did not hesitate to push his own biological father out as a shield, truly a filial son. Hee. Gu Qingxian let out a sarcastic sneer. Don't worry, him, I naturally will not let go. Let's continue talking about the affair between US brothers. Gu Qingxian squatted down, facing Gu Yuntian's eyes full of fear. From childhood to adulthood, I was always respectful and yielding to you. The pills distributed by the family, cultivation techniques, anything good, as long as you opened your mouth. Which time did I not let you have it? I always thought your qualification for cultivation was not as good as mine. I, the younger brother, would help you a little more, so the gap in our realms would not be too big in the future, and we could serve the family together. But what were you thinking? Gu Qingshuan's voice suddenly rose a bit. You took my yielding as cowardice. You took the resources I saved for you as your right and proper. You enjoyed everything with peace of mind. Had you ever felt a trace of gratitude? You didn't. Not only did you not feel grateful, but you were afraid of me, afraid that my cultivation would get higher and higher, afraid that my talent was too good, and would snatch your position as young family head. You were afraid that everyone would compare me with you, saying that you, the young family head, were inferior to me, your cousin, in everything. So, you overtly and covertly suppressed me everywhere, disparaged me in front of the clansmen, saying I was arrogant, unruly. Gu Yuntian, you touch your own conscience and ask, is what I said correct? Every sentence was piercing to the heart. Gu Yuntian opened his mouth, but couldn't spit out a single word, his body trembling like a fallen leaf in the autumn wind. What Gu Qingxian said was all facts. The darkest corners in his heart, that he didn't dare let anyone know, were thus dug out bloodily by Gu Qingxian, spread out in the sunlight. Gu Qingxian stood up, no longer looking at him, continuing to say, later, I was favored by an elder of the Tianxian sword sect, extremely glamorous. You didn't dare to do anything to me again, only able to accompany me with a smiling face, calling me cousin Qingxian every mouthful, calling me more intimately than anyone else. Later still, I had my cultivation destroyed by the sect, driven back to Qingyang City, becoming a known to everyone waste. At that time, what were you, this good cousin, doing? Gu Qingshuan's tone carried a cold playfulness. Oh, I remembered. You not only occupied my original courtyard, but also drove me to the side room. Not only that, you instigated your lackeys, every day blocking the door of my broken courtyard, pointing at my nose, scolding me as a waste, scolding me for disgracing the Gu family, letting me roll out myself. Don't dirty the ground of the Gu family. At that time, why didn't you mention that we were brothers connected by tendons and broken bones? Now, you are about to die. Only then do you know I am your cousin. Too late. Gu Qingxian, step by step, completely shattered the last line of defense in Gu Yuntian's heart. He looked at Gu Qingxian. On that face that once made him mad with jealousy, there was no expression at all. No, don't. Gu Yuntian let out a beast-like wail. He wanted to crawl, wanted to escape from this place. But he was injured too heavily. His breastbone was shattered. His internal organs were all displaced. Even the slightest movement caused heart-piercing and lung-tearing pain. Large mouthfuls of fresh blood gushed out of his mouth. Gu Qingxian slowly stood up and lifted his foot again. I said, I will not let you die comfortably. As his words fell, crack, a sound of bone fracturing that made one's teeth ache rang out. Gu Qingshuan's foot precisely stepped on Gu Yuntian's right arm. Ah! A shrill scream echoed throughout the courtyard, making everyone who heard it feel their hearts crawl. Gu Yuntian's right arm was twisted in an unnatural posture. The stark white bone spurs pierced through his skin and flesh, exposed to the air. The excruciating pain made his whole body convulse. However, this was just the beginning. Crack! Another sound. Left arm. Crack. Left leg. Right leg. In just a few short breaths, Gu Yuntian's four limbs were, inch by inch, all broken by Gu Qingxian. He was like a puddle of mud, lying paralyzed on the ground. Except for issuing wheezing breaths and unconscious twitching, he could no longer make any movement. He was in so much pain he almost fainted. But Gu Qingxian used spiritual energy to protect his heart meridians, constantly keeping his life hanging by a thread, allowing him to feel this world's most extreme pain with perfect clarity. Gu Qingxian looked at Gu Yuntian, who had almost become a human stick under his feet, and indifferently lifted his foot again, slowly moving it to the position of Gu Yuntian's dantian. No, no! Gu Yuntian sensed the intention of that foot. His remaining reason made him issue a desperate whimper. He knew what Gu Qingxian was about to do. That was a punishment 10,000 times more cruel than just killing him. Bang! Gu Qingshuan's toe fell. A focused force penetrated into his body, directly crushing his dantian. Gu Yuntian's whole body convulsed violently. The magnitude was so great that his already fractured bone spurs were displaced once again, piercing through even more blood and flesh. But he could no longer feel the pain in his limbs. A sense of emptiness far exceeding physical pain exploded from his lower abdomen, instantly sweeping through his entire body. Threads of pure spiritual energy uncontrollably and frantically leaked out from his dantian, dissipating into the air. He could clearly feel his cultivation rapidly retreating. Xiantian realm level 1, falling. Qi condensation realm level 9, falling. Qi condensation realm level 8, level 7, level 6, body tempering realm. His cultivation poured out wildly all the way, until finally, his dantian was completely empty, unable to generate even a single trace of spiritual energy anymore. His dantian was broken, completely broken. Gu Yuntian's eyes, which were bulging due to extreme pain and fear, at this moment, completely lost all luster, becoming gray and desolate, dead and silent. He had become a through and through waste. Gu Qingshuan's toe moved again, followed by another foot stomping and exploding his demon pill. Blood splashed. Gu Yuntian issued a shrill scream from his throat, only feeling that life was worse than death. He even wanted to beg the other party to give him a quick end. Just at this moment, a shrill shout filled with endless rage and killing intent, like a thunderclap, rang out above the courtyard. You wicked beast! How dare you hurt Tianer? Before the words fell, several tyrannical auras rushed from far to near, arriving rapidly. In just a few breaths, a figure carrying a wild wind was the first to rush into the courtyard, followed by 7 or 8 Gu family elders with equally powerful auras. The person who arrived was none other than the Gu family head, Gu Hongyao. He received the news that Gu Qingxian had escaped from the dungeon, and hearing the screams coming from here, he rushed over with his people in a hurry. And the first sight he saw upon rushing into the courtyard was that pile of bloody and blurred meat on the ground, which had become almost unrecognizable. When he saw that familiar yet twisted face clearly, saw that collapsed chest, the arm turned into meat paste, and those legs twisted and broken at strange angles, Gu Hongyao's breathing stopped for a split second. The next moment, all the blood in his body seemed to rush to the top of his head. An indescribable, violent rage rushed straight from his chest cavity to his skull. His eyes, within a single breath, were flooded with endless bloodshot veins, becoming completely crimson red. Tianer! He issued a shrill roar, and turned his head fiercely. Those crimson eyes, locked firmly onto Gu Qingxian beside him. You, little bastard! Every word seemed to be squeezed out of his chest with all his strength. On the ground, Gu Yuntian, who had originally been breathing more than he was taking in, at the moment he heard his father's voice, actually seemed to have a flash of a return to consciousness. His broken body shook violently. He used his last bit of strength, twisting his mud-like body toward the direction of Gu Hongyao, stretching out that hand which no longer had any shape, squeezing out broken syllables from his throat, hoarse to the point of not sounding human. Dad, save me, kill him for me, this bastard. I want him to die. I want him to die without a whole corpse. This shrill scream, to the extreme, became the last straw that broke the camel's back. Boom! A majestic aura, at this moment, surged into the sky from Gu Hongyao's body without any reservation. It was the pressure of the peak of the Yuan Dan realm level 9, condensed into a visible torrent of air waves, tearing the air, making a sharp whistling sound, all frantically surging toward Gu Qingxian alone. The stone slab ground in the courtyard cracked inch by inch under this pressure, spider web-like cracks spreading in all directions. The several elders following behind Gu Hongyao, those with weaker cultivation, were even forced back repeatedly by this aura, their faces full of horror. horror. Family head. He is truly enraged. I will pull your tendons and peel your skin. Light heavenly lanterns with your soul. And make you never reincarnate for eternity. Gu Hongyao spoke word by word, each word carrying the hatred and madness of wanting to tear someone alive. He wanted this little bastard who ruined his son, amidst endless pain, to die wailing. However, in the center of that torrent of aura sufficient to crush mountains, Gu Qingshuan's silhouette did not move at all. He just stood quietly, not even lifting a corner of his clothes. He spoke in a cold voice. Uncle, I will return these words to you as well. The next moment, Gu Hongyao no longer suppressed his killing intent, and struck out with a palm from a distance. Majestic spiritual energy spewed from his palm, gathering rapidly in front of him. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a gray hawk with a wingspan exceeding 3 zhang. That gray hawk was lifelike, every feather made of pure spiritual energy. It issued a sharp cry toward the sky, the lifted airflow blowing the broken stones in the courtyard flying wildly, diving straight down toward Gu Qingshuan's head. For this strike, Gu Hongyao used 10% of his strength. He wanted to take this wicked beast who ruined his son, and defied his superiors, and blast him and his soul into powder together. Until this moment, until that deadly gray hawk was less than a zhang above his head, Gu Qingxian finally had an action. He slowly lifted his head, for the first time looking directly at this high and mighty Gu family head. His uncle, facing that aggressive, gray hawk phantom capable of easily tearing apart a small mountain. Gu Qingshuan's action was simple to the extreme. He just lifted his right hand, made a fist. Immediately after, an indescribable power, with Gu Qingshuan's fist as the center, exploded. That formidable spiritual energy gray hawk didn't even have time to issue a wail. Starting from its sharp claws, it disintegrated inch by inch, crumbling section by section. The violent power surged backward, resistless and unstoppable. In just one breath, the entire gray hawk phantom completely collapsed, turning into dots of spiritual energy light across the sky, dissipating into the air. Puff! The attack was broken. Gu Hongyao himself also suffered a strong backlash, his figure retreating violently for several steps. His throat felt sweet. A large mouthful of fresh blood was immediately sprayed out. The several Gu family elders who followed behind Gu Hongyao at this moment were all like being cast with a immobilization spell, stiff in place, their movements frozen. Some had mouths open wide enough to fit an egg, some hands still maintaining the posture of preparing to form seals. Everyone's eyes were wide open, staring fixedly at the scene in the field. Their brains completely stopped thinking. Family head. The family head at the peak of Yuan Dan Realm Level 9, struck in anger, was blasted back by that waste, with one punch. Moreover, looking at the family head's appearance, which was clearly not comfortable, he was obviously severely injured. Am I seeing things? An elder rubbed his own eyes, his voice trembling. No, it's not a hallucination. The family head. He actually. Another elder pointed at Gu Hongyao, whose aura was chaotic, unable to complete his sentence. The horror on their faces was 100 times more intense than when they saw Gu Yuntian being crippled before. Gu Yuntian being crippled. They were shocked by Gu Qingshuan's ruthlessness and audacity, but now, what they were shocked by was Gu Qingshuan's unfathomable, completely incomprehensible strength. What on earth is going on? Wasn't Gu Qingshuan's Dantian destroyed, becoming a through and through waste? Wasn't even the cultivation of the body tempering realm unable to be preserved? A waste who couldn't even condense spiritual energy. How could he collapse the full strength blow of the peak of Yuan Dan Realm Level 9 with one punch? And how could he severely injure the powerful family head to this extent? What forbidden technique did this kid practice? Or what heaven-defying opportunity did he obtain? The several elders looked at each other, all seeing the unconcealable wariness and confusion in each other's eyes. After Gu Hongyao retreated several steps, he barely stabilized his figure. He lifted his head. On that face which was usually full of dignity, at this moment only one emotion remained: horror. His gaze was locked firmly on the young man not far away, his eyes shocked and angry, carrying a trembling that could not be understood. Purple Mansion Realm. You are actually at the Purple Mansion Realm. After Yuan Dan Realm is the Purple Mansion Realm. The gap between every major realm is like a chasm, fundamentally impossible to overcome. He couldn't figure out, no matter what, how a guy whose Dantian was destroyed, 4 limbs broken, and reduced to a waste, could, in such a short time, not only recover his cultivation, but leap to become a Purple Mansion Realm expert who is a major realm higher than himself. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Unless, a thought flashed rapidly through Gu Hongyao's brain, pointing at Gu Qingxian with bloodshot eyes, and shrieking exhaustedly at the several elders who were already feeling wary. What are you all stunned for? This wicked beast must have obtained some heaven-defying opportunity and treasure. Only then can he have this cultivation. Strike with me. Kill this beast. Seize his opportunity. Absolutely cannot let him leave here alive. Otherwise, the Gu family will have no peace. Gu Hongyao knew clearly in his heart that today's matter had completely torn off the mask, with no room for maneuver. The strength displayed by Gu Qingxian and that unconcealed killing intent. Once he leaves today, then what awaits the Gu family will inevitably be a catastrophe. He must die. The several Yuan Dan realm elders heard this. Their bodies trembled unconsciously. They looked at each other, their faces full of wariness and hesitation. Are you kidding? That is a Purple Mansion realm expert. The family head, a peak of Yuan Dan realm level 9, was beaten into into severe injury with one punch. Are they, these Midyuan Dan realm ones, not just sending food up by going there? But Gu Hongyao is the family head. His order, who dares not to listen? Moreover, the family head's words also awaken them. Opportunity and treasure. A treasure that can make a waste leap to become a Purple Mansion realm expert. What kind of heaven-defying object that must be, if it can be obtained? Greed, instantly suppressed fear. The several elders looked at each other, all seeing determination in each other's reactions. Fight, wicked beast, die. The family head is right. Hand over the treasure, and we can let you die comfortably. Several people roared to embolden themselves, at the same time mobilizing their full spiritual energy, no longer having any reservations. For a time, several magic artifacts flew into the sky, flashing with various colors: blade light, sword shadows, fist wind, palm strength, from all directions, blocking all of Gu Qingshuan's retreat paths, weaving into an impenetrable net of slaughter, covering him from above. Facing this joint attack capable of flattening a small mountain, on Gu Qingshuan's face, finally appeared a trace of unconcealed contempt. Grains of rice, also dare to shine. He was even too lazy to move his feet, just silently reciting in his heart: system, amplify my cultivation technique, breaking spirit fist, 1000 times. Ding, amplification successful. Yellow grade high grade cultivation technique, breaking spirit fist, has been amplified to earth grade low grade cultivation technique, breaking star fist. Almost at the same moment the system prompt fell. Gu Qingxian lifted his right fist again, then swung a punch violently. The air in front of his fist rapidly collapsed inward, compressing, forming an absolute vacuum zone. Immediately after, an invisible fist aura condensed into shape, carrying an earth-shattering, terrifying aura that shattered everything, met the attack of those elders. Crack, crack, the blade light shattered, sword shadows dissipated. The attacks of those elders, in front of this punch, were like paper, instantly torn apart. Afterward, that tyrannical fist aura, its momentum undiminished, slammed heavily into their chests. Puff, puff, puff. A series of blood-vomiting sounds rang out. Those Guiyuan realm family elders, their bodies like kites with broken strings, all flew backward together, falling to the ground, dead or alive unknown. One punch, just a single punch, the entire courtyard instantly fell into a dead silence. Gu Hongyao watched helplessly as those several Yuan Dan realm elders, in front of him, were all dealt with in one punch. Those were several Yuan Dan realm experts, the top-tier fighting force of the Gu family besides him. But now, they were in front of Gu Qingxian, as fragile as 3-year-old babies, unable to even take a single move from the other party. Gu Hongyao felt as if all the blood in his body had frozen at this moment. Gu Qingxian no longer looked at those elders on the ground whose lives were unknown. He turned his head, looking at Gu Hongyao who was frozen in place. In those eyes, calm as a deep, bottomless ancient well. Uncle, Gu Qingxian spoke, the voice not loud, but clearly transmitted into Gu Hongyao's ears. Have you eaten? This nonsensical question made Gu Hongyao's brain blank. Gu Hongyao's Adam's apple rolled up and down, but couldn't spit out a single word. Gu Qingxian looked at him, a smile even appearing on his face. If you haven't eaten, then take a punch from me. The moment the words fell, all expressions on his face disappeared, only leaving a coldness that made bones ache. Boom! The bluestone ground under his feet cracked in response, crushed stone splashing. A deep pit covered with cracks appeared out of thin air, and his silhouette, like teleportation, appeared in front of Gu Hongyao. Too fast, so fast that Gu Hongyao's thinking could not react at all. In his field of vision, only a palm, rapidly enlarged. Escape. This was the only thought in Gu Hongyao's brain, but he discovered in horror that he couldn't do it. An invisible but heavy as a mountain power nailed him firmly to the spot, let alone escaping. Even moving a finger, mobilizing a trace of spiritual energy in his body, had become an unattainable extravagance. This is not the power of the Purple Mansion realm. This thought exploded in Gu Hongyao's heart, bringing a fear deeper than death. Purple Mansion realm. Absolutely impossible to suppress him. A peak Yuan Dan realm level 9. To this extent just by using aura. This is the suppression of a higher level realm. Soul Palace realm. At the very least, it would take a half-step Soul Palace realm to be able to reach this level. The next moment, Gu Qingshuan's hand, unbiasedly grabbed Gu Hongyao's collar, like lifting a little chicken, lifting his whole person off the ground, feet off the ground. No! Gu Hongyao finally squeezed out a trace of sound from the extreme fear, but it was too hoarse to sound human. Gu Qingxian ignored him, his other hand lifted slowly, 5 fingers curled into a fist. A destructive power began to gather on his fist. That power was too terrifying, even causing the air around his fist to start twisting, collapsing. He really wanted to kill him. At this moment, Gu Hongyao clearly felt the breath of death. The instinct for survival instantly crushed all his dignity and majesty as a family head. Qingxian, cousin. Gu Hongyao hurriedly squeezed out a facial expression uglier than crying, his voice trembling violently because of fear. Don't be impulsive. I am your own uncle, he pleaded incoherently, trying to awaken that family affection which fundamentally did not exist. We are connected by blood. You cannot kill me. You forget when you were young, I even held you. As long as you let me go, I can pass the position of family head to you. On Gu Qingshuan's fist, majestic spiritual energy was still frantically gathering, the light growing brighter and brighter. The aura of destruction lowering the temperature of the entire courtyard by several degrees. He turned a deaf ear to Gu Hongyao's pleading. That fist-gathering terrifying power had no intention of stopping in the slightest, because Gu Qingxian listened to Gu Hongyao's rhetoric about being connected by blood, and only felt it was laughable. He even laughed softly. This laughter in the silent courtyard seemed particularly harsh. Uncle, you talk to me about family affection now, and you think I would care about the position of a tiny Gu family head? Don't you find it ridiculous? Gu Qingxuan's voice was not loud. When you crushed my dantian, broke my 4 limbs, and locked me in the dungeon like a dead dog, why didn't you think about me being your own nephew? When your son Gu Yuntian, with a group of people, trampled me under their feet, wantonly humiliating me, why didn't you think about us being connected by blood? Every time Gu Qingxian said one sentence, the hand grabbing Gu Hongyao's collar tightened 1 degree. Gu Hongyao was strangled until his face flushed, veins popping on his neck, his feet kicking wildly in the air. That was. Gu Hongyao struggled to squeeze out a few words from his throat. That was the Gu family. The trade-offs of the Gu family. He seemed to have grasped the last straw of life, defending with all his strength. As the Gu family head, everything must be prioritized for the family's interests. Tian'er is still young. He is the future of the Gu family. And you were cultivation destroyed, already a waste, using a waste, to appease the anger of the Qingtian sect, to preserve the entire Gu family. This was the most correct choice. Gu Hongyao's voice became sharp and harsh due to hypoxia. If it were you, if you sat in my position, you would also do this. For the family, there must be sacrifices. Well said. Gu Qingxian nodded, his face revealing no joy or anger. Since this is the case, Gu Qingxuan's tone became flat, unable to hear any ripples. Then uncle, I only ask you one thing. He loosened his hand, allowing Gu Hongyao to barely take a breath. Gu Hongyao breathed greedily, his chest rising and falling violently, looking at Gu Qingxian suspiciously. He didn't know what this plague star was going to ask again. My father, how did he die? As soon as this question came out, Gu Hongyao's pupils shrank violently. The little bit of blood color that had just eased, instantly faded clean from his face, his body trembling uncontrollably. Your father. Gu Hongyao's lips trembled, his eyes flashing chaotically, not daring to look at Gu Qingxian at all. He forced himself to calm down, his Adam's apple rolling, his voice dry as if 2 sheets of sandpaper were rubbing. Your dad. Of course he died in that beast chaos. It was those damned fierce beasts that killed your dad. He bit the last few words particularly hard, seeming to want to increase the credibility of his words, or seeming to be emboldening himself. Is that so? Gu Qingxian shook his head, the hand grabbing his collar, tightened again slowly. But uncle, for so many years, you only said my dad went missing, never said he was already dead. Gu Hongyao only felt the power on his neck growing larger and larger, a strong sense of suffocation surging up again, making his vision go black. He wanted to argue, but couldn't spit out a single word. Gu Qingxian leaned closer, using a volume only the 2 of them could hear, spitting out word by word. Just now, Gu Yuntian already told me everything, he said. It was he who killed my dad, and all of this was directed by you from behind the scenes. As soon as this was said, Gu Hongyao felt as if all bones and strength had been drawn out of his entire body. His brain buzzed, turning completely blank. No, impossible. Tian'er, how could he tell this matter out? That rebellious son, that fool, how dare he? This matter was the deepest secret buried in his heart, the greatest inner demon of his life. He thought this secret would rot in his stomach forever, but never expected that it would be personally stabbed out by his most spoiled son. Nonsense. Gu Hongyao was like a cat whose tail was stepped on, using his last bit of strength, shrieked violently, his voice changing tune. Tian'er, he was just babbling. He was scared out of his wits by you. What he said was all drunk nonsense. Qingxian, you must not believe his words. He was like a madman. Where was there any majesty of a family head? Not believing his words. Does that mean I should believe yours? Gu Qingxuan's hand grabbing Gu Hongyao's collar, his knuckles tightened, a root of blue veins popping on the back of his hand. He looked down at this uncle in name, this Gu family head. In his voice, there was no longer a trace of flatness. It was a kind of anger that had been suppressed for too long, and was finally about to erupt. Gu Hongyao. Gu Qingxuan's voice rose suddenly. Every word seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth, carrying bone-chilling coldness, resounding through the entire courtyard. Without your instruction, Gu Yuntian, that fool, how dare he lay a hand on my father? Does he have that brain? Does he have that courage? My father Gu Zhanyuan. What outstanding talent back then. Cultivation peerless among his peers. If it wasn't for his unexpected disappearance, this position of Gu family head, when could it have been your turn? This despicable, shameless, insidious and lowly villain to take question after question, curses one after another, no longer leaving any room for negotiation. And just at this moment, outside the courtyard, a series of noisy footsteps approached from far to near. Family head. What happened? Qingxian, what are you doing? Quickly release the family head. The first to arrive were several clan elders of the Gu family. As soon as they entered the courtyard, they saw a scene they would never forget in their lives. Gu Qingxian, who was considered a waste by the whole clan, was currently holding their family head Gu Hongyao with one hand, suspending him in midair as if he were a chick. And the majestic, family head Gu Hongyao, with cultivation as high as Yuan Dan realm level 9, was actually helpless in Gu Qingxuan's hands, kicking kicking his legs wildly, his face suffocating into a purple color. How is this possible? Wasn't Gu Qingxian Dantian broken? Cultivation completely wasted? How could he have such terrifying strength? Several elders were stunned. For a time, not knowing how to react, they wanted to step forward to help, but were blocked behind by Gu Qingshuan's pressure. Immediately following, more and more Gu family members rushed over after hearing the news, soon filling the small courtyard to the brim. When they saw the situation in the courtyard clearly, everyone, like the elders, revealed looks of disbelief. For a time, inside and outside the courtyard, the sounds of gasping for cold air came one after another. People whispered to each other, "Isn't that Gu Qingxian? Isn't he locked in the dungeon? Look at who he is holding. My god, it's the family head. Is my vision blurred?" A waist lifted the Yuan Dan realm level 9 family head up. What did he roar just now? I didn't hear clearly. Seemed to mention Gu Zhanyuan. The discussion grew louder. Everyone's curiosity was raised to the extreme, and those clansmen who heard the previous dialogue used a lowered but unconcealable excited voice to repeat it to those around them. Gu Zhanyuan didn't die in beast chaos, but was killed by Gu Yuntian. What? This news, like a blockbuster bomb, exploded in the crowd. Gu Yuntian killed Gu Zhanyuan? Is he crazy? That is his own second uncle. The point is not this, the person at the beginning quickly added. The point is, Gu Qingxian said, the mastermind behind all this is the current family head, Gu Hongyao. Hiss. This time, everyone heard clearly. Everyone's movements, everyone's sounds, stopped at this moment. Dozens of eyes, carrying various emotions of shock, surprise and other complexities, moved in unison from Gu Qingxian, and then focused on Gu Hongyao who was being held in his hands. Feeling the shifting gazes of the clansmen around, Gu Hongyao's expression also became gloomy. He knew, today's matter could no longer be handled well. Dignity, majesty, the face of the family head, in the face of absolute strength and bloody truth, all became ridiculous bubbles. Since the camouflage had been torn off, then just tear it off completely. Ha 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 ha. A burst of mad laughter suddenly burst out from Gu Hongyao's throat, hoarse and sharp, full of madness as if he were fighting to the death. Right, it was me. It was I who instructed Tian'er to do it. Gu Hongyao's eyes were crimson, staring fixedly at Gu Qingxian, the expression having both the shame and anger of being exposed, and a kind of ferocious, letting go attitude. But so what? He suddenly raised his volume, the voice carrying a kind of hysterical resentment and unwillingness. Do you think your father is any good thing? He is fundamentally not of my Gu family's bloodline. He was just a wild seed picked up by the old man from the mountains back then. A mere wild seed. Why does he have so many people recommending him to be the family head of the Gu family? Boom. As soon as this was said, it was more shocking than any news before. The whole field completely exploded. What? Gu Zhanyuan is a wild seed? How is this possible? Discussion, exclamations, incredible clamor rose one after another. All clansmen were shocked by this heaven-shaking secret. Even Gu Qingxian, his hand grabbing Gu Hongyao's collar tightened uncontrollably. Wild seed? Father is not the biological son of grandfather? This thought flashed across his mind, but did not stir up too much ripples. For him, a transmigrator, so-called blood kinship, was far from as deeply rooted as he imagined. He cared more about what Gu Hongyao would say next. Saying I snatched his position of family head. Gu Hongyao was like a demon, the muscles on his face twitching wildly. It's better to say that he, a wild seed, threatened my status as the orthodox heir. You tell me. He was almost roaring, sputtering spit onto Gu Qingshuan's face. A wild seed of unknown origin. Why compete with me? Why serve as the head of my Gu family? Just because his talent was better than mine? Just because he was more favored by that old thing? I am the young family head. I am the legitimate heir. Gu Hongyao's emotions were completely out of control, pouring out the resentment and jealousy accumulated in the bottom of his heart for decades, without reservation at this moment. Sure enough, like father like son. But the result? That group of old things in the family, those so-called clan elders, all of them were blind. They all supported that wild seed, forgot that I was the young family head back then. Qingxian, my good nephew, you come and judge. If I didn't kill him, even if I were lucky enough to become family head in the future, it would only be a puppet, a joke controlled by the old subordinates of that wild seed. I killed him. Was I wrong? I was just taking back what should have belonged to me. What mistake did I make? Gu Hongyao's voice echoed over the ruined courtyard, every word filled with crazy self-justification. However, his words did not win him any sympathy. Instead, they made all the clansmen present look at him with increasingly cold gazes. Regardless of whether Gu Qiyuan was biological or not, his contribution to the Gu family could not be ignored, for the sake of power, not hesitating to murder a meritorious subject of the family. This kind of behavior that extinguishes human nature had long since broken everyone's moral bottom line. Are you done talking? Gu Qingshuan's voice was very light, but it was like a basin of ice water, drenching all of Gu Hongyao's madness. Gu Hongyao froze, facing Gu Qingshuan's eyes that were indifferent to the extreme. There was no anger in them, no sadness, not even a trace of emotional fluctuation could be seen. Gu Hongyao looked at Gu Qingshuan's calm face, and a ridiculous chill grew in his heart. He shouldn't have this reaction. A son who had looked up to his father since he was a child. How could he be indifferent after hearing the secret that his father was a wild seed, enough to subvert everything? He should be angry, should be broken, should be completely defeated by this news. But Gu Qingxian didn't. His expression was calm, as if listening to a neighbor's gossip that had nothing to do with him. Past events are gone. Next, Gu Qingxian leaned down, leaning into Gu Hongyao's ear, continuing to say in a volume that only the two of them could hear. I will let you experience what I once felt, 100 times, 1,000 times the pain. Before Gu Hongyao could open his mouth, an indescribable, acute pain exploded from his lower abdomen. Bang! A dull impact sound. Gu Qingshuan's fist slammed squarely into Gu Hongyao's Yuan Dan. The power of that punch didn't leak out in the slightest, directly shattering it instantly. Gu Hongyao hunched into a big shrimp, eyes bulging wide, mouth wide open, but unable to issue any sound. Majestic true essence, like a burst flood, frantically leaked out from the shattered dantian, dissipating clean in a blink of an eye. The meridians in his body also snapped inch by inch under the impact of that power. Decades of hard work, lost in a single morning. Until the spiritual energy was completely drained, that heart-drilling acute pain turned into a shrill, extreme wail. His whole person softened, held by Gu Qingxian by the collar, like a puddle of mud. Finished. Everything is finished. He was no longer the high and mighty Gu family head, no longer a Yuan Dan realm level 9 expert. He had become a waste, a total waste, not even as good as the body-tempering realm. The surrounding Gu clansmen were one by one silenced, looking at this shocking scene before them, not even daring to breathe, crippling the cultivation of the family head. This is, how rebellious. But unfortunately, no one dared to step forward to say a word. Gu Qingshuan's methods had completely suppressed everyone. Don't be in such a hurry to faint. Gu Qingshuan's voice was very light, but it made the limp Gu Hongyao shudder. The good show has just begun. He casually threw Gu Hongyao to the ground, then stomped on his left palm. Crack! A crisp bone cracking sound rang out. Gu Hongyao's little finger was forcefully trampled until it folded backward and snapped, the white bone spurs piercing through the skin and flesh, exposed to the air. Another burst of heart-tearing screams. Count backward from 1,000. Gu Qingshuan's soul ground, adding pressure. Count one word wrong, or if the sound is too small for me to hear, I will add some color for you. Gu Hongyao's whole body trembled violently, cold sweat and tears covering his face. He looked at Gu Qingshuan's expressionless face, and felt he was even more terrifying than the ghosts in hell. The instinct for survival made him dare not disobey. 1,000. His voice trembling to an unrecognizable state, carrying a heavy sobbing tone. 999. Crack. Gu Qingshuan's toe moved. The ring finger snapped in response. Why, I didn't count wrong. Gu Hongyao screamed in collapse. The voice is too small. Gu Qingshuan's answer was simple and direct. Gu Hongyao's body convulsed, the acute pain and fear making him nearly faint, but he dared not. He took a deep breath, and roared with all his strength. 998, 997, 996. His voice echoed in the ruined courtyard, shrill and desperate. The surrounding clansmen had some who could no longer bear to watch, silently turning their heads away. Some timid women were scared out of their wits, hiding behind men and trembling. This was no longer revenge. This was the cruelest torture. 972. Say, 70. Gu Hongyao's consciousness had begun to blur. Numbers turned into a mess in his brain. Crack. Another bone cracking. The middle finger broke. Counted wrong. Gu Qingshuan's voice was still flat. In Gu Hongyao's throat. Only beast-like wheezing could be issued. He was in so much pain he was about to go crazy. His fingers, his palms, were no longer in any human shape. I was wrong. I was wrong. He gave up counting, began to kowtow frantically to beg for mercy. Qingxian, please, kill me. Give me a quick end. I beg you. He didn't want anything anymore. The position of family head, dignity, everything, is not worth ending this inhuman pain a moment earlier. Comfortable? Gu Qingxian chuckled lightly. Wouldn't that be letting you off too lightly? He lifted his foot, seeming prepared to step on Gu Hongyao's other hand. Watching that foot lift, Gu Hongyao's pupils were filled with extreme fear. He knew the fate awaiting him would only be 10 times, 100 times more miserable than now. No, this cannot go on. A strength from nowhere suddenly surged from Gu Hongyao's body. He used his final bit of resolve. His neck jerked back suddenly. Then he bit down hard on his own tongue. Puff! A mouthful of fresh blood spurted from his mouth. Gu Hongyao's body convulsed violently several times. In his wide-open eyes, the spirit rapidly dissipated, finally turning into dead silence. He actually bit his tongue to commit suicide. Gu Qingxian looked at the gradually cooling corpse on the ground, and pursed his lips. TSK, how boring. He seemed very dissatisfied with this result, feeling that the other party ended too quickly, terminating his game ahead of schedule. However, he had no interest in continuing to torture him. After all, there is no pleasure in tormenting an ant that can be crushed at will. After saying this, he seemed to have remembered something, turned around, and strode toward the other side. Over there, Gu Yuntian, who had been kicked away by him, and had long since fainted, was lying on the ground like a dead dog, motionless. Gu Qingxian walked to his side, stopped, and under the suspicious gaze of everyone, he slowly lifted his foot, and then dropped it heavily. Bang! A muffled thud, as if a watermelon were being smashed open. Red, white, splashed everywhere. The courtyard was deadly silent. The air was filled with a strange smell of blood mixed with brains, so thick it was nauseating. Everyone's movements froze, staring straight at at that mess of red and white under Gu Qingshuan's feet. That was once the hope of the Gu family, young master Gu Yuntian. Now, it was just a pile of rotten meat. Gu Qingxian lifted his foot expressionlessly, and wiped the filth off his sole on the stone steps beside him, the movement as casual as if he were wiping off some mud accidentally on him. This was just the first step of his revenge. Only after he finished all this, did he turn his gaze to those ordinary Gu family elders who had arrived in the courtyard. Those seen by him, all lowered their heads, not even daring to breathe loudly. Several elders who were close by, their legs were shaking, almost unable to stand steady. The miserable sight of Gu Hongyao being tortured to death was still fresh in their minds, and now Gu Yuntian's head had been trampled into pulp. This disaster star was not human at all, but a devil. Go! Gu Qingxian spoke, the voice not loud, but it made the bodies of all the elders tense up. Summon all the clansmen to the martial arts arena. He paused, and added, I have something to announce. Several elders looked at each other, their foreheads covered in cold sweat. Announcing something at this time? Announcing what? Announcing the dissolution of the Gu family? But no one dared to ask, and even less dared to refuse. The leading elder at the Xiantian realm level 8 was the person with the highest status present, other than the deceased Gu Hongyao and the core Gu family elders. He summoned his courage, bowed and responded, yes, we will handle it immediately. His voice was trembling, afraid that saying a wrong word would result in his own head being trampled open like a watermelon. Hurry! Gu Qingxian waved his hand impatiently. Those elders seemed to have received an amnesty, scrambling and crawling out of this bloody courtyard, as if evil ghosts demanding their lives were chasing behind them. They now had only one thought, that was, to be as far away from this disaster star as possible. But at the same time, they also had a calculation in their hearts. Family head Gu Hongyao, crippled, dead. The several core elders who supported the family head also lay on the ground, breathless. Now, the top combat power of the Gu family had a huge vacuum. If this disaster star Gu Qingxian just walked away, within a month, the Wang family, the Li family, and the Zhang family of Qingyang City would definitely pounce like sharks smelling blood, and gnaw the Gu family until not even bones were left. But if Gu Qingxian stayed, although he was not of Gu family bloodline, and even had a blood feud with the Gu family, but with such a purple mansion realm killing god sitting in the town, let alone the Wang family and Li family, even the city lord's mansion would have to weigh it. Pros outweighed the cons. This was the conclusion that these old guys, in extreme fear, instantly reached. Therefore, Gu Qingshuan's orders, they must execute, and do so with all their might. Watching the backs of the elders fleeing in a panic, Gu Qingxian did not pay attention anymore. He turned, ignored the corpses and bloodstains all over the ground, and strode toward the original owner's courtyard. The courtyard was the same as before, furnishings old, the house also a bit drafty. Gu Qingxian pushed open the creaking wooden door, and walked in. The furnishings inside were simple to the point of being crude. A hard wooden bed, a table with a missing corner, a chair. He looked around, then shouted outside, come here. Soon, a young servant in charge of chores ran over tremblingly, peering from the courtyard gate, not daring to enter. Qingxian, young master, what are your orders? The servant's face was white, apparently having heard what happened in the front courtyard. Bring a bucket of hot water, and get a set of clean clothes. Gu Qingxian ordered. Yes. The servant dared not ask more, and ran away. That speed faster than going to be reincarnated. Not long after, hot water and clothes were delivered. The clothes sent were not ordinary cloth clothes, but a set of refined moon-white brocade clothes, embroidered with cloud patterns in silver thread, looking valuable at first glance. Apparently, those elders were using this method to silently express their attitude. Gu Qingxian didn't say anything, closed the door, took off the old clothes covered in blood and dust, and took a thorough bath. The hot water washed his body, and also washed away that heavy smell of blood. He changed into the brand new brocade clothes, and walked to the only bronze mirror in the room. The mirror was a bit blurry, but still could reflect a silhouette. The young man in the mirror, figure tall and straight, black hair tied behind his head, facial contours clear, perhaps because of the improvement in cultivation. His skin also became smooth, matching this luxurious brocade. The whole person had less of the past gloominess, and more of an indescribable handsomeness and aura. Gu Qingxian looked at himself in the mirror, and tugged at the collar, making it sit better. He was very satisfied with how he looked now. This was what he should look like. Revenge was just the beginning. The Gu family was also just the beginning. He tidied his clothes and crown, pushed the door open, and the sky outside had gradually darkened. In the distance, in the direction of the Gu family's martial arts arena, voices were loud, torches bright. It seems, everyone has arrived. The good show should officially begin. Gu Qingxian strode forward, walking toward the martial arts arena. He didn't walk fast, but every step was steady. Starting today, the sky of the Gu family is going to change. In the Gu family's martial arts arena, the night wind blew by, stirring up the dust on the ground, yet it could not dissipate the congealed, tangible stench of blood. Nearly 1,000 Gu family members were gathered here, a dark, dense crowd, yet it was so quiet one could hear a pin drop. Everyone's gaze was fixed tightly on the high platform in the center of the arena. There, a figure stood with hands behind his back, moon-white brocade clothes fluttering slightly in the night breeze, setting off that figure to look even more tall and straight. Gu Qingxian, when his calm, waveless gaze swept across the crowd below the platform. All the clansmen who met his eyes felt as if they had been pricked by an invisible needle, their hearts shrinking abruptly, and they hurriedly lowered their heads. It was an indescribable feeling, as if all their thoughts, and all their secrets, were seen through completely under that single glance. Below the high platform, a few corpses and several limp figures became the most shocking embellishments of this bizarre scroll. Family head Gu Hongyao, young master Gu Yuntian, and those several core elders who were usually high and mighty. The dead were dead, the crippled were crippled. This scene was more impactful than any words. Within the crowd, a strong and honest-looking youth was also among them, Gu Changfeng. He looked at that figure on the stage who was both familiar and strange, his heart beating wildly and uncontrollably. Was that still the cousin Qingxian he knew? Yes, and yet no. That face was still that face, but that aura, that indifference, that attitude of viewing all things as straw dogs, made him feel a shiver, trembling from the depths of his soul. Beyond the fear, a trace of unspeakable, complex emotion sprouted in his heart. Just amidst this atmosphere that was suffocating, Gu Qingxian finally spoke. His voice was not loud, but it clearly entered the ears of everyone in the martial arts arena, as if whispering right in their ears. I presume you are all very curious about what happened. He paused, lifted his hand, and pointed casually at those limp figures below the platform. It's very simple. Family head Gu Hongyao and his son Gu Yuntian, together with their accomplices, attempted to plot against me, and have all been suppressed by me. In a flat tone, he stated an earth-shattering fact, as if he were saying, I just casually swatted a few flies to death. Boom! The crowd exploded instantly, although they had already guessed in their hearts. But when Gu Qingxian admitted it personally, that shock still made many people's scalps tingle. He really killed the family head? How dare he? Devil! You devil! Suddenly, an elder whose cultivation had been crippled, and was lying on the ground, lifted his head abruptly, his eyes crimson, shouting crazily, Gu Qingxian, you murdered the family head, harmed the clansmen, you will have a terrible death. This desperate, shrill curse pierced through the night sky, and also shouted out the sentiments of many people who dared to be angry but dared not speak. However, Gu Qingxian on the high platform did not even lift his eyelids. He just directed toward the direction of that elder, and flicked his finger. Puff! A trace of imperceptible energy precisely entered the elder's wide-open mouth. That elder's shouting came to an abrupt end, issuing a strange wheezing sound from his throat, his hands clutching his own neck tightly, his face turning liver-colored, but he could no longer make a sound. Gu Qingxian did not kill him, he only crippled his vocal cords. This move was more chilling to those around than killing directly. Killing is just a point of the head to the ground, but this method was silently declaring a kind of absolute control. I want you to live, and you will live. I want you to die, and you will die. I want you to never be able to speak again, and you will have to be a mute for the rest of your life. The martial arts arena fell into dead silence again. Even the sound of breathing became cautious. Furthermore, Gu Qingxuan's voice rang out again, the subject changing. Before Gu Hongyao died, he told a secret. Everyone's hearts rose to their throats. A secret? What other secret could be more explosive than him killing the family head? They saw Gu Qingxian scanning the audience, using a tone almost like chatting, calmly throwing out a more shocking thunderbolt. He said, I am not of Gu family bloodline. What? In the crowd, countless people lifted their heads abruptly, their faces full of disbelief. Gu Qingxian is not a Gu family member? How could this be possible? Isn't he the son of Gu Zhanyuan? Although Gu Qingxuan's mother died early, and his father went missing, but he indeed grew up in the Gu family. Therefore, Gu Qingxian ignored the commotion below, and continued, I am standing here, not as a clansman of the Gu family, but as a debt collector. Now, the debt has been collected. This sentence instantly replaced the Gu family crowd with boundless fear. The debt has been collected. Then what next? He is not a Gu family member, and has a blood feud with the Gu family head. Now that the great revenge has been achieved, how will he deal with the Gu family? Will he kill them, all of them? Thinking of this possibility, many timid clansmen's legs were already soft, almost unable to stand firm. Even worse, already issued low whimpers. The whole Gu family, at this moment seemed to have become lambs for slaughter, and that young man in white on the high platform, was the god of death holding a butcher knife. Just as everyone was shrouded in despair, Gu Qingxuan's words came again. However, my father once received the grace of being raised by the Gu family. Today, I will repay this karma on his behalf. This sentence stunned everyone. In the depths of despair, unconsciously sprouting a weak fire of hope. What else does he want to do? They only heard Gu Qingxuan's voice, carrying a kind of irrefutable majesty, resounding through the whole martial arts arena. From now on, the Gu family is taken over by me. What I say is the rule. As his words fell, his cold gaze swept slowly over every person's face below the platform. Who is in favor? Who is against? On the martial arts arena, not a sound could be heard. Gu Qingxuan's flat questioning was like two invisible tall mountains, pressing on the heart of every Gu family member. In favor? Who has the qualification to favor an outsider who just slaughtered the family head's lineage? Against? Who has the courage to oppose a terrifying existence who can suppress even the Yuan Dan realm at will? Cold sweat seeped from everyone's temples, their hearts beating wildly in their chests, yet not daring to make any strange sound. They were like a group of ducks whose throats were pinched, opening their mouths, yet unable to make any sound. Just in this suffocating atmosphere, an old yet particularly abrupt voice, tremblingly rang out. This old man is against. This voice was not loud, but it was like a pebble, thrown into a dead lake, instantly attracting everyone's attention. The crowd seemed to be pushed away by an invisible hand, automatically making a passage. An old man leaning on a pearwood cane, with sparse white hair, walked out step by step from behind the crowd. His back was already hunched, his face covered with deep wrinkles and age spots, his turbid eyes revealing a majesty that could not be questioned. It is the Great Elder. My God, isn't the Great Elder in death meditation? How could he come out? A low exclamation rang out in the crowd. This old man was the person with the highest seniority in the Gu family. Gu Hongyao had to respectfully call him third grandfather when he saw him. He had been in meditation for decades, trying to break through to the Purple Mansion realm, but had been stuck at Yuan Dan realm level 9, his lifespan nearing its end, originally having stopped interfering in worldly affairs. Today he was alarmed by the emergency bell of the Gu family. As soon as he came out of meditation, he heard about this shocking change. Now seeing that young man in white on the high platform, and the corpses of Gu Hongyao father and son slaughtered below the platform, he was instantly trembling with anger. The old man stood still in the center of the martial arts arena, stomped his cane heavily on the ground, issuing a muffled thud. He lifted his withered finger, pointing directly at Gu Qingxian on the high platform, scolding with heartfelt pain. Young child, ignorant of the height of heaven and earth, even if you are truly not of my Gu family's bloodline, your father Gu Zhanyuan was raised by my Gu family single-handedly. This is a heaven-high grace. You now do not think of repaying the kindness, but instead kill the family head, harm the clansmen, simply lower than pigs and dogs, rebellious and against the way heavenly principles cannot tolerate. His voice was somewhat hoarse due to excitement, but every word was sonorous, filled with so-called righteousness. He tried to use his noble seniority, and the family's ethics and hierarchy, to convict Gu Qingxian. After speaking, he scanned the surroundings, looking at those clansmen who were silenced like cicadas, shouting sharply and severely, such treacherous officials and traitors. Everyone gets to execute them. Are you just going to watch him destroy the foundation of my Gu family for hundreds of years? The ancestors of my Gu family are watching you in heaven. This speech, indeed, made some clansmen who were already dissatisfied. The weak spark of fire reignited in their eyes. However, when the gazes of these people inadvertently met that calm silhouette on the high platform, that bit of courage which had just risen was instantly doused cold. In those eyes, there was no emotion, no anger, no killing intent, not even contempt. There was only a kind of pure, heart-palpitating indifference, as if looking at a buzzing in the ear, annoying fly. Gu Qingxian looked at that old guy below the platform who was eloquently speaking, with saliva flying everywhere, not even bothering to frown. Since this is the case, then I will send the Great Elder to see the ancestors of the Gu family. Before his words fell, he didn't even look at the old man again, just standing where he was, toward that direction, casually curled his index finger, and flicked it lightly, a simple movement to the extreme, yet condensed terrifying spiritual energy to the extreme. Puff! A slight sound that was almost impossible to hear clearly. The next moment, that Great Elder who was preparing to continue his long speech, his passionate expression instantly solidified on his face. In the center of his forehead, a red dot the size of a needle tip appeared out of thin air, a drop of blood slowly oozing out. All expressions on his face disappeared. His turbid eyes instantly lost all luster, becoming hollow and bewildered. Clatter! The pearwood cane he was holding tightly slipped from his hand, falling onto the bluestone slab, dying on the spot. At this moment, the bit of luck and movement that had just risen in the hearts of all clansmen was completely crushed into powder. What seniority, what qualifications, what righteousness, in front of this one finger, were as fragile as a joke. On the high platform, Gu Qingxian seemed to have only done a trivial thing. His waveless voice, like the final judgment from under the 9 netherworlds, echoed in everyone's ears again. Anyone else has objections? On the martial arts arena, deadly silence. Gu Qingxuan's question echoed over the empty field, like an invisible sharp sword, hanging over the heads of every Gu family member. No one answered, and no one dared to answer. Everyone's gaze could not control itself but focused on the same place, that Great Elder lying in the pool of blood, his body still maintaining a posture of leaning forward, as if the next second he was going to continue his passionate statement, but he could no longer speak a word. The small blood hole on his forehead was so inconspicuous, yet like a black hole devouring everything, sucking in all the courage, luck, and spirit of resistance of everyone, crushing them into powder. Yuan Dan realm level 9, just one step away from stepping into the Purple Mansion realm, becoming an existence of a powerful local tycoon, just like that, by a casual finger, wiped out in public, not even leaving a final word, or a complete action. Gulp. I don't know who, under extreme fear, swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty. This sound was particularly harsh in this environment where even a needle could be heard. Slap. It was the Great Elder's corpse, finally losing its last support, pouncing forward, his whole face down, slamming heavily onto the hard bluestone slab, issuing a muffled sound of flesh. This sound became the last straw that broke the camel's back. Thump. In the crowd, a middle-aged deacon's legs went soft, no longer able to support the weight of his body, his knees slamming heavily onto the ground. This movement seemed to be a signal, a plague plague that would spread. Thump, thump, thump. A chain reaction like a mountain collapse and sea howl instantly swept through the entire martial arts arena. 1, 10, 100. They knelt on the ground in patches, like wheat fields blown by the wind, falling down in unison. No one dared to lift their heads again to look at that silhouette on the high platform. They pressed their foreheads firmly against the cold and rough ground, wishing they could bury their whole bodies into the ground, their bodies trembling violently because of uncontrollable fear, teeth chattering, issuing slight clicking sounds. Just amidst this depressing kneeling, a hoarse yet incomparably loud voice used its full strength, erupted from the crowd. We are willing to respect the command of Lord Qingxian, never to refuse even at the cost of 10,000 deaths. The one shouting was an assistant elder who was quite discerning. He knew very well. Now it was no longer a question of taking sides, but a question of surviving. Making a statement first, perhaps could still beg for a glimmer of life. His loud shout was like throwing a spark into boiling oil, instantly detonating the entire field. Those kneeling clansmen woke up as if from a dream, straining their necks, issuing the loudest shouting of their lives. We are willing to obey the command of Lord Qingxian, never to refuse even at the cost of 10,000 deaths. Lord Qingxian is eternal. My Gu family is willing to submit for generations. Please Lord Qingxian govern the Gu family. We have absolutely no second thoughts. For a time, the shouts of allegiance came one after another, gathering into a deafening torrent, circling above the martial arts arena, soaring straight into the clouds. Those assistant elders who were loyal to Gu Hongyao before, now shouted louder than anyone else, more devout than anyone else, as if they were born to be Gu Qingshuan's most loyal supporters. However, facing this mountain shouting and sea howling kneeling and allegiance, Gu Qingxian on the high platform had no changes on his face. He did not even, because of the submission of the Gu family crowd, blink his eyes more. His gaze swept slowly over the dark mass of people below, sweeping past faces distorted by fear and sycophancy. He could see the fear hidden under their humble postures, could also see, in some people's eyes, the flash of opportunism and ambition. His gaze did not linger on anyone too long, directly passed through the dense crowd, and finally, fell on the most remote and inconspicuous corner of the martial arts arena. There, someone was also kneeling, but that person was different from the others. He did not prostrate himself, did not shout loudly, just silently kneeling there, lowering his head, making it impossible to see his expression. Gu Qingxian looked down at the hot and hypocritical tide of people below. The voice, not loud, but clearly entered everyone's ears. Changfengji, simple 3 words, made the shouting in the whole field stop abruptly. Everyone was stunned, looking at each other, not knowing what the new master wanted to do. Gu Changfeng, which Gu Changfeng? As Gu Changfeng stood up blankly, some Gu family disciples' faces revealed looks of realization and contempt. Oh, is it that waste who is almost 30 years old, and still wandering in the body-tempering realm? Gu Changfeng himself also shook violently, slowly lifting his head, his face filled with bewilderment and anxiety. He completely didn't understand why Gu Qingxian would suddenly call his name. On the high platform, Gu Qingshuan's voice rang out again, carrying an irrefutable meaning. You, come up to the stage. Under the eyes of everyone, every step of Gu Changfeng seemed to be treading on the tip of a knife, struggling to move to the center of the high platform. He didn't even dare to lift his head to look at Gu Qingxian, just lowering his head, hands helplessly clutching the corners of his clothes, like a prisoner waiting for judgment. On the martial arts arena, that dark mass of kneeling crowd also quietly lifted their heads. Countless gazes focused on Gu Changfeng, filled with confusion, incomprehension, and deep contempt. Just when everyone was puzzled, Gu Qingxian finally spoke. His voice was still flat, but like a thunderbolt from the 9 heavens, exploding in everyone's brain. From today on, Gu Changfeng is the new family head of my Gu family. In an instant, the whole world seemed to have been pressed on the mute button. The wind stopped, the clouds stagnated, everyone's breathing paused at this moment. The Gu family members kneeling on the ground, one by one widened their eyes, mouths wide open. The expressions on their faces solidified into absurd paintings. They doubted whether it was because of excessive fear, that they had auditory hallucinations. Family head, Gu Changfeng, that mediocre family talent who was almost 30, and still wandering in the body-tempering realm level 5. Countless people could not control themselves and lifted their heads, looking at Gu Qingxian on the high platform with eyes like looking at a madman, letting a mediocre person approaching 30, who couldn't even break through to the qi condensation realm, be the family head. Isn't this the same as pushing the entire Gu family into a pit of fire? Some assistant elders who valued their identity, even forgot their previous fear, their faces revealing obvious dissatisfaction and resistance. Gu Qingxian took in all the reactions below, his voice turned cold. Why? Do you have objections? The moment the words fell, an aura far more terrifying than before erupted from his body, like an invisible ancient mountain, pressing heavily on the heart of everyone in the martial arts arena. The air seemed to have turned into sticky glue, making people's breathing become incomparably difficult. They only felt their hearts were gripped by an invisible big hand, unable to make a single sound. All disturbing sounds stopped abruptly. Then Gu Qingxian turned his head to look at Gu Changfeng beside him, who was completely petrified, as if struck by heavenly thunder, his voice revealing a bit of gentleness. Changfengji, how do you feel? No, absolutely not. Gu Changfeng woke up from a dream, waving his hands repeatedly. Because of extreme shock. His voice changed tune. Xiandi, I can't. What virtue and ability do I have? I am just a mere body tempering realm. He spoke incoherently, anxious and sweating profusely. The position of family head, to him, was like the sun in the sky, something he didn't even dare to dream of. And the position of family head, to him was not glory, but a raging fire sufficient to burn him to ashes. Gu Qingxian looked at the anxious Gu Changfeng. His voice softened a bit. Changfeng Ji, you are the only person I can trust in this Gu family, so don't belittle yourself. Before his words fell, he had already issued an instruction to the system in his heart. System, amplify Gu Changfeng's cultivation 900 times. Instruction confirmed. Replication points consuming. Target, Gu Changfeng. Cultivation amplification beginning. The next moment, a mutation occurred. An incomparably powerful aura erupted from Gu Changfeng's body without warning, turning into a white air column visible to the naked eye, soaring into the sky. This is. Everyone lifted their heads in horror. Under their incomparably shocked gaze, Gu Changfeng's cultivation began to skyrocket frantically. Body tempering realm level 6, level 7, level 8, level 9. Gu Changfeng's aura rose a big chunk suddenly, formally stepping into the realm that countless bottom-tier disciples dreamed of. Qi condensation realm level 1, level 3, level 5, level 9 peak. However, this was not yet over. That violent aura showed no sign of stopping at all. After breaking through the shackles of the Qi condensation realm, continuing to climb upward at an even more terrifying speed. Xiantian realm. My god. He broke through to Xiantian. A scream of surprise erupted in the crowd. A scream of surprise erupted in the crowd. Just look at the sky above the martial arts arena. Wind and clouds changed color. Massive amounts of spiritual energy of heaven and earth were drawn by an invisible power, gathering into a huge spiritual energy vortex above Gu Changfeng's head, frantically pouring back into his body. My god. He is still breaking through. He reached the Xiantian realm. How is this possible? A series of ghost-seeing exclamations erupted in the crowd. However, the scene that scared their souls out was still to come. That violent aura, after stepping into the Xiantian realm, not only did not weaken, but became increasingly fierce, smashing through everything all the way. It directly broke through the barrier of the Yuan Dan realm, which countless mediocre cultivators need to spend decades of hard work to reach, and launched an impact. Boom rumble. A dull, loud sound, as if the world were being created, exploded inside Gu Changfeng's body. A phantom golden Yuan Dan, within his Dantian sea of energy, began to condense at a speed visible to the naked eye, spinning, solidifying. Yuan Dan realm formed, but this was still not the end point. That aura seemed to have no limits. Yuan Dan realm level 1, level 5, level 9, Yuan Dan realm level 9 peak. Break. Purple mansion realm. Everyone's brain completely crashed at this moment. Finally, that air column that penetrated heaven and earth, after soaring to the peak of the purple mansion realm level 9, only one step away from condensing the soul palace, finally slowly stopped. Then all receded back into Gu Changfeng's body. They watched with their own eyes as Gu Changfeng's cultivation rocketed all the way from the body tempering realm, finally staying steadily at that realm they felt was luxurious even to look up to. From a waste at body tempering realm level 5, to a top expert at purple mansion realm level 9, before and after, it took no more than a quarter of an hour. If this is not a miracle, what is it? Those well-informed assistant elders were all like being under an immobilization spell, maintaining the posture of wide-open mouths and round eyes, motionless. They felt their worldview was completely subverted at this moment, and then crushed into powder. On the high platform, Gu Changfeng himself also stood blankly in place, looking down at his own hands, feeling the unprecedented, majestic power surging like rivers and seas in his body, the whole person like being in a dream. Just in this silence sufficient to make people suffocate, Gu Qingxuan's faint voice rang out again, clearly entering everyone's ears. He looked at those faces below the platform that were sluggish, terrified, and shocked to the point of distortion, repeating his previous question. Now, who still has objections? As the words fell, not a sound could be heard. The Gu family members below the platform, including those assistant elders, were each like chickens choked by the throat. The blood color on their faces faded clean, and they even forgot how to breathe. Objections? Who would dare to have objections? Who the hell would dare to have objections? A bottom-tier cultivator at body tempering realm level 5, within a quarter of an hour, in front of everyone, was forcefully raised to the purple mansion realm level 9. What kind of method is this? This is a divine method. The next moment, a mountain shouting and sea howling roar rang through the clouds once again. We pay respects to the family head. We pay respects to the family head. This time, there was no more insincerity, no more reluctance. In everyone's voices, only the most primitive awe remained, and that fanaticism deep in their marrow. They looked at Gu Changfeng on the high platform, just as if looking at a god walking among humans, and Gu Qingxian, who created this god, in their eyes, must be an even more terrifying existence. Changfeng Ji, the rest of the matters, I leave to you. Gu Qingxian patted Gu Changfeng, who was still in a trance, on the shoulder, waking him up from his daze. Okay. Gu Changfeng nodded subconsciously, his mind still a complete mush. Gu Qingxian did not say anything more, turned around, and walked down the high platform. Everywhere he passed, the crowd parted to the two sides sides like a tide. Everyone involuntarily lowered their heads, not even having the courage to take a glance at him. Just like this, under countless gazes of awe, fear, and fanaticism, he walked out of the martial arts arena step by step, and returned to that remote courtyard where he once lived. For the next 2 days, Gu Qingxian didn't go anywhere, just stayed quietly in the courtyard. He needed time to accumulate more replication points. During these 2 days, the Gu family, however, stirred up monstrous waves. Gu Changfeng, with the cultivation of the Purple Mansion Realm level 9, strongly took over the position of family head, with no one unconvinced, and the rumors about the miracle at the martial arts arena spread with the speed of a storm, sweeping across the entire Qingyang city. On the morning of the 3rd day, Gu Changfeng finally finished handling all affairs, and hurried to Gu Qingshuan's courtyard. He dismissed all the servants. Looking at Gu Qingxian, who was resting with his eyes closed in the courtyard, he hesitated to speak several times, but ultimately could not suppress the stormy seas in his heart. Xiandi, Gu Changfeng's voice carried a hint of trembling, and an awe that even he himself had not noticed. You, how on earth did you do it? That kind of method of improving cultivation out of thin air is simply unheard of. This is something even the legendary immortals could not do, right? These 2 days, he lived as if in a dream, the majestic, sea-like power within his body, reminding him at every moment that all of this was real. But he racked his brains, and still could not understand how all this came to be. Gu Qingxian slowly opened his eyes, looking at the shocked and bewildered Gu Changfeng. He just smiled non-committally. Changfeng ji, just some small tricks. No need to take it to heart. Small tricks? Gu Changfeng's mouth twitched fiercely. Letting someone in the body-tempering realm become a Purple Mansion Realm level 9 in a quarter of an hour, and calling this a small trick? Then what would be called a big trick? Becoming an emperor in a single thought? He felt his worldview was once again being rubbed repeatedly against the ground. Gu Qingxian did not explain too much. With a thought, he called up his system panel. Host, Gu Qingxian. Cultivation, Purple Mansion Realm level 9. Status, crippled, recovered. Replication points. In 2.5 days, over 250,000 replication points. This meant, he could amplify 25 things by 10,000 times. Looking at this number, Gu Qingxian felt much more at ease. Just at this moment, Gu Changfeng seemed to have thought of something. The shock on his face gradually replaced by thick worry. He lowered his voice, and said urgently, Xiandi, your methods are heaven-defying, but you really shouldn't have displayed them in front of everyone that day. Now the whole Qingyang city is going crazy with rumors, saying our Gu family has produced a deity with heaven-defying abilities. Once this kind of thing spreads, it will inevitably cause a huge sensation. By then, what it attracts might not just be curiosity, but the greed and covetousness of countless people. I am afraid we are going to be in big trouble. The more Gu Changfeng spoke, the more frightened he became. An innocent man bearing a jade ring is guilty. Having treasure is a crime. He still understood this principle. Although the Gu family is considered a first-class family in Qingyang city, looking at the entire Tianfeng dynasty, they aren't even counted as third class. Once this kind of divine method is known by those truly great powers, the consequences would be unimaginable. They will be like sharks smelling blood, swarming over, and swallowing Gu Qingxian and the entire Gu family, skin and bones, cleanly. However, after listening to his worries, Gu Qingshuan's face did not have the slightest ripple. He just chuckled lightly, and asked back in a calm tone, Changfeng ji, do you think, since I dared to do this, I wouldn't have any preparations? Gu Changfeng was stunned. Gu Qingxian did not keep him in suspense. With a flip of his palm, 3 plain-looking pale yellow talismans appeared in his palm. On the talismans, there were only a few simple patterns, emitting weak spiritual energy fluctuations. These are things found in the storage ring, sword chi talismans, at most only capable of causing a bit of trouble for cultivators in the chi condensation realm. Changfeng ji, watch carefully. Before the words fell, Gu Qingxian silently recited in his heart, System, consume 30,000 replication points to amplify these 3 sword chi talismans by 10,000 times. Instruction confirmed. Replication points minus 30,000. Target, sword chi talismans x3, 10,000-fold amplification beginning. Buzz. A slight buzzing sound. Gu Changfeng's eyes widened in horror, seeing the 3 pale yellow talismans in Gu Qingshuan's palm, as if they had come alive. The patterns on them started to twist frantically, reorganizing, bursting into incomparable silvery brilliance. A sharp, overbearing, terrifying aura that seemed capable of severing all things in the world erupted from the talismans. That was no longer chi, but an existence of a higher level, called intent, sword intent. In no more than a breath's time, the light dissipated. The 3 talismans had completely changed their appearance. The whole body presented a crystal-clear silver color, the surface covered with mysterious and intricate golden patterns, as if containing the principles of heaven and earth. Gu Qingxian flicked his finger, and the 3 talismans flew lightly in front of Gu Changfeng. This is. Gu Changfeng's voice was hoarse, his Adam's apple rolling up and down. Gu Qingxian spoke indifferently. The voice clearly entered his ears. Sword intent talismans. Each one seals a complete sword intent. After activation, it can slay the Will See realm. Gu Changfeng shook violently, his eyeballs almost popping out of their sockets, exclaiming screaming in a lost voice. He subconsciously reached out his hand, wanting to take those 3 talismans. But halfway there, he stopped abruptly, trembling violently. He felt these 3 talismans were not treasures, but 3 divine mountains capable of crushing the sky and earth. Too hot to handle. Xiandi, this absolutely cannot be. Gu Changfeng backed away a step violently, as if stung by a scorpion, waving his hands repeatedly, his face filled with panic. This is too precious. Being able to slay the Wheel Sea realm. Do you know what this means? His voice was trembling, lowering his throat, as if afraid of being heard by others. According to rumors, in our entire Tianfeng dynasty, only that royal ancestor has reached the cultivation of the Wheel Sea realm. These 3 talismans are equivalent to 3 one-time killing weapons at the level of the Tianfeng ancestor. This is simply something capable of overthrowing a country. I cannot accept them. Gu Changfeng's head shook like a rattle drum. He did not doubt in the slightest that once this thing was exposed, let alone the Tianfeng dynasty, even powers at higher levels would spare no cost to come and snatch them. However, Gu Qingxian just smiled lightly, and with a casual wave, those 3 talismans were steadily suspended in front of Gu Changfeng's chest. Changfeng Ji, I said, just some small tricks. His tone was as casual as if saying, here are a few steamed buns. You take them and eat. This kind of thing, as many as I want, I can have. Boom. This sentence had even more lethality than the 3 talismans just now.